Here's Brooks, getting the edge. Brooks. Touchdown, Texas Tech.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Sanders breaks contain, fires it down the field, and caught by Travis Hunter.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Better 3 for 5 here so far today. Looking in zone, looking for Burden.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Hampton wide open running. 30, 25, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Carolina.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Milroy steps up in the pocket. He's going to take off with it, and he's getting the first down and a lot more. This is what he can do. Milroy might have scored.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
This is going to be returnable for Cal. Out across the 20 and out into the open field. And all the way down the sideline, that's Ott, Jaden Ott, who's been returning kicks lately. Touchdown, Cal.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome in, 365 Sports. It's Thursday already. Week's just flying by. And we have had 2 days, and it looks like it's finally starting to clear up, but of torrential downpours here in Waco. And Craig, you got soaked last night.
Yeah. As we got out of here yesterday, it started to appear as though it was going to storm pretty good, and I had to make a little errand, a little stop at Walmart. I had to do it last night to get something, and by the time I got to Walmart, it was pouring down rain. I mean, torrential downpour. And I figured, well, I can sit here for, I don't know, like an hour, and hopefully it tapers off, or I can just go ahead and bite the bullet and just like kind of run on in. Turns out the umbrella that I was looking for in my car is right here, as Garrett just pointed out. So that's why I couldn't find it yesterday. But I just was like, okay, I got to go home at some point. I'm not going to sit in this parking lot all night. And so I made the run for it. And that was okay, although I got just pretty well. But the return trip, I just got in my car a little while ago because I knocked out all my errands. First time I got in my car today was to head on over here, and I'm now sitting in a wet chair because my jeans are completely soaked because last night my car got completely soaked because by the time I got into it after shopping, I did not have a dry piece of fabric or skin or whatever on my entire body. I was to the point where I was like looking down to like adjust my seat, and like rain's just rolling off my bill of my cap, just completely soaked. So yeah, we've been hammered here pretty good lately. I'll dry off eventually. The rain stopped for the time being, but I know our good pals down in Temple Belton got pretty nasty stuff last night. That's probably what I walked in for a little bit. Luckily, we didn't have any tornadoes or anything. I know that's been affecting folks all over the country. So thoughts for everybody having to deal with that. But, yeah, it's been a stormy spring so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be indoors. And just before this, you missed the show. There was a crackhead with a bat on the corner yelling at things. So that was interesting.
He was getting it, man.
He was. It was we got lunch and a show, so it was fine. It was good. I mean, no one else is there, but
we're in a nice place, but it happens from time to time, no matter where. You know how like being close to any downtown area is. It's every once in a while you're gonna have a street performer, if you will, and we do.
I had many questions. One, where to get the bat? And that's the most important one.
Yeah.
2, who does he think he's yelling at? And 3, how does this end? Which the third one all those questions I'll never have an answer to. But anyway, jumping into it today, Craig, I saw this tweet from Ross Dellinger last night, and Ross Dellinger he's on like a Joe DiMaggio streak of like leading off our shows because of his coverage. But I thought this was interesting and kind of a way to look at, like, this is compounding bad decisions right here. In 2021, the NCAA argued before the Supreme Court against sharing $6,000 of benefits with athletes. 3 years later, they have this gigantic settlement, and it's the biggest change in the history of college sports. Like, you were talking about not giving $6,000 to each college athlete, and now you're kind of up against it. And that's what happens when you fight against something for so long and you don't see the bigger picture of you can try to keep people down all at once, but if you've decided that you're going to go all or nothing, then there's only two options, right? It's all or nothing. And so for a long time, it was all or nothing for the athletes, and now the pendulum was completely swung, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this kind of thing at length at this point, but I guess when you see some numbers attached to it, it makes it that much more staggering. I mean, I don't know how many different ways I can say that NCAA and college leaders screwed up or that anybody else can at this point. I mean, I think we've all collectively described it as many ways as you possibly can, but who knows? The longer they drag out court battles or continue to have court battles, I should say, the more time we'll have to get even more creative on describing how they basically self-destructed in so many ways and to what level. Like, was it complete destruction or was it just partial? Right now, it just appears it'll be, partial and still, an entity moving forward. But the way that it looks is going to probably be drastically different. It's already drastically different than it was just a couple years ago and certainly 10 years before that and 10 years before that. And so, yeah, it's an organization that gets mocked quite frequently. I don't know if it's always fairly because I think sometimes they get picked on for things that aren't really in their control or things they really couldn't do anything about. But obviously 95% of the S that they take is a result of their own inactions or actions. And it's the schools at the end of the day. Like, that's the thing is it's all the schools. Like, the schools are the ones making these decisions. It's not like there's just like this higher power organization that's like pulling all of the strings. I mean, the schools have say. And so they're leading their own way and therefore kind of leading themselves to their own demise. You just wonder like how many wolves were sitting there talking with the sheep dressed in sheep's clothing the entire time, right? When you look at some of the ways that they clearly aren't on the same page any longer. But yeah, that's going to forever be a thing for college sports fans, and I'm sure those in NCAA leadership of what if we had done this sooner. But then again, a lot of the answers by the people who had a say in that matter would be, well, then I'd have a lot less money in my pocket, so I did the right thing after all. That's the thing I always got to remind myself is I don't feel sorry. A lot of the people making the decisions probably would have done the same thing all over again because they got fat and happy off of it. Yeah. So they don't really care that the people in power now or whoever's having trouble now is having trouble. Like, they got fat and they got what they wanted, and they knew eventually the buck was going to keep getting passed until eventually payday was going to come. And unfortunate timing for those who are having to be the ones to now write the checks, but that was all a result of years and years of bad leadership.
Yeah, I just go back to, and we had the guy on the show, he worked for the NCAA and like worked up a whole thing that was like, hey, this is kind of where things are legally trending. And then as soon as Mark Emmert took over, he's like, poppycock. They'll have flying cars before this happens. Like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
You keep on, pushing it down the road and see what happens. And yeah, I do think that the leaders of college football, like every time there's opposition to this, they just kind of saw it as, well, Chris Webber's mad. Let's just Chris Webber. Everybody else is fine. Well, and then, this guy's mad. Well, Johnny Manziel had that thing. Well, yeah, it's just that thing. They saw everything as isolated incidents and nothing was connected, and
these are people running universities in so many ways. I mean, it's in some cases because it's not just athletic directors that have all the say. It's presidents and chancellors and everybody else. And so, I think there was definitely some stupidity involved, some naivete involved, but I also think there was a whole lot of greed involved. And that's what I always come back to because, man, like we all love college sports, but it's a greedy business, and it's just like any other business. Like the NFL's that way, Major League Baseball's that way, America's that way. Like for God's sake. So I mean, it is what it is. We can poke on them all day long and continue to rub their face in the mud. But now it's about trying to like clean your face off and figure out what the hell this looks like. And unfortunately, a lot of the people trying to make those decisions now weren't in the position to do so previously. But mostly just the situation has so drastically changed legally that they have no choice. Otherwise, I'm sure, I mean, that's why they won't just go ahead. I know part of it's cost, but full employee status, like they're still fighting back in so many ways to try and maintain what they have. So we'll see how much they're able to do that and pull off whatever they can eventually pull off. But yeah, it's a lot of losing at the moment.
Absolutely. I say number two. Number two on the list here, James Franklin has been a second doctor. Now, a doctor is suing him because he believes he was fired because of a personality conflict with James Franklin and not his performance on the job. And that doctor and now a second one have kind of corroborated that James Franklin would interfere in medical decisions for the team. This is, and again, I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't know, we don't know what to believe yet or what all the facts of the case are, but this is a bad look for James Franklin at Penn State. And he's an old school guy. I get that. But part of this comes from he pushed a doctor to move towards cutting a player who was having suicidal thoughts. And there's a lot of accusations in here that don't make James Franklin look very good. And I'm curious to see where it goes. But I'm not ready to jump on the, oh my God, James Franklin is a monster yet, because this is, a suit where you've got one very aggrieved party that is not happy about losing their job and mad at the guy who is in charge. And there's, another team doctor that said, yeah, he agrees that James Franklin can get involved in medical decisions, but we'll see how it plays out. But not a good look for the Nittany Lions head coach.
Yeah, but why would it be a good look if you're being accused of something that somebody's trying to win a case against you? So they're going to make you look as bad as possible. Yeah. And by alleging that you attempted to influence a doctor to disqualify a suicidal player, that's an awful allegation, and one that definitely needs to be looked into, and one that needs to be figured out on just how culpable he may be, because if so, then that's an awful thing for anybody, but certainly a guy leading young men the way that he does. Haven't heard much about this, in general. I know the last couple of days there's been more reporting on this, but yeah, I mean, just on the surface it looks bad. But you got to remember too, like when you're dealing with lawsuits and allegations, like it's going to be bad. That's why you brought the case, and that's why you're suing, or that's why you're doing whatever you're doing. And we've seen, I think, plenty of times with that initial headline, you're like, oh, my God, what a bastard. And then, it turns out they're not guilty, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll reserve judgment as more information rolls in. But, yeah, the allegation itself is horrific. And I just would lean on thinking that James Franklin's a better person than that. But it's also the athletic director in Sandy Barbour that's also mentioned in this as well. And it was Pete Seidenberg, who was the primary care doctor back in 2014. He made those claims that you mentioned during a civil trial. And, we'll see if it adds up to something that turns out to be true. But said that he declined to give in to pressure. He mentioned other instances where he thought, and that's the words, like, you thought one thing, but how is that perceived in front of, other people? But that he thought Franklin overstepped in trying to get his way on medical decisions. You know what that also sounds like? A college football coach or a football coach or just a sports coach, because, like, does not every movie have, like, an example of a coach? And I don't know, that doesn't mean it's normal or that it's right, but, like, I think every sports movie I've watched, there's, like, the old crusty ball coach who's, like, putting the syringe in the knee of the running back to get him, like, back out on the field.
Bud Kilmer.
Yeah, like Bud Kilmer in it. Like, that's the way it's portrayed. So, it wouldn't be that out of pocket, I guess, in our heads to think that a coach could do something like that. But I'm going to hope for the best and think that James Franklin or Sandy Barbour were not trying to do that, especially, medically disqualifying a player who had attempted suicide so you could get a scholarship. Like, that just seems a level of evil that is just beyond Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would hope that they're better than that, and I believe that they're better than that, so we'll see. But certainly some shocking accusations when you read them in print.
Yeah, is it him interfering? Is it him just being overzealous about medical decisions?
Is this guy reading it completely wrong?
Because if he's legitimately interfering and putting people at risk, that's one thing. Or is it just you don't like the way that he agrees with your opinion or disagrees with your opinion on things?
Yeah, this lawsuit's been bubbling. He had to revise it a couple years back. He'd been dismissed. He filed a lawsuit against Penn State after that happened, and then revised it. And I guess statute of limitations removed Franklin, but the allegations are still out there because it's still at Penn State's medical center and one of the doctors there that dismissed him. So that's why Franklin's involved, but he's not, based on what I read, like culpable. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not one of the defendants that had been removed due to statute of limitations. So there's not a concern there on his part. Could be just headline, stuff there, but I'm interested to hear anything else that comes from that. But again, I would hope that's not the case, and I don't believe that's the case.
Yeah,
until proven otherwise, and then I'll say, okay, what a bastard, and what a piece of scum. But I'll hope for the best in that situation.
Bob Bowlsby got paid $17 million last year by the Big 12 as they paid off his contract that he had in a lump sum, which is good for Bob Bowlsby. And you see this big number.
Great for Bob Bowlsby.
It's great for Bob Bowlsby, yeah. And, I know there's a lot of people that would see this and go, oh, my gosh, how does he do that? And look, I think he's worth $17.2 million for the Big 12 because he essentially saved the conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think he deserves a lot of credit. I also think he deserves still some blame.
Yes,
yeah.
But he did, he did the right thing when he had to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a weird spot with him because I do feel like there was a lot of inaction, and then again, I also don't know what they could have done to make Oklahoma and Texas happy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you were completely caught off guard by that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no denying that, and they had to scramble. And so, yeah, he deserves big thumbs up and a lot of praise for the way he handled that situation once it occurred. But I don't know how much culpability he has on the buildup to it, right? Bottom line is the Big 12 is still around. It's not the third highest paid conference, depending on what you look at, like per team. But given the ACC situation, it's not far off from possibly being that. And possibly depending on what happens with the ACC over the course of the next few months and maybe even a couple of years longer, they might not even be around, and the Big 12 by default would be the third strongest conference. That remains to be seen. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen before we get to that point, but he did a great job in a time of crisis for sure, and I commend him for that. I would love to pick his brain and hear just how how inevitable it was that Oklahoma and Texas were leaving, and how much of that was a surprise. Like, had he some indication and then got completely caught off guard again, or was it kind of like, oh, today's the day, huh? And I don't think it was that latter, because obviously they seem to be pretty caught off guard by it. But I would just have to think nowadays, every athletic director is just kind of, you got to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice and just always be wary of your teams if there's any chance any of them could be valuable elsewhere. So it was a different time than now, since USC's left and Oregon's left and Washington's left and UCLA's left, and you got the ACC stuff going on. So we're probably paying a lot more attention to that kind of thing than before. But he did do a great job when they eventually had to move quickly. And I know there's at least 4 schools that are very thankful that he acted the way that he did, because they're now in the Big 12 and in a much better spot than they were previously. And good for him. That ought to. I'm sure he was already doing okay, but I'm sure that will really make that retirement nice and sweet for him. And what a way to go out, helping the Big 12 survive and then riding off into the sunset, a hero in some ways, as opposed to what he could have been considered had he not done that. And he could have been, talked about the way we talk about certain people over in the Pac-12, honestly. He could be George Kliavkoff had they not been able to figure out a better solution. So, yeah, certainly ended up a much better way than it could have gone for him. So good for him, and that's a nice payday for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Also in athletic director news, Graham Rossini officially now is the athletic director at Arizona State as he takes over. Amid a little bit of controversy, there was some blowback on him getting the job, but he now has it. They now have someone who is an actual athletic director as opposed to an agent who then became an athletic director. The leadership at Arizona State, as we know, showed very little foresight when it came to what was going on with the Pac-12. But now a Big 12 school, Graham Rossini, is in, and he will take over that post. And I'm sure we'll try to get him on the show and talk about what they have ahead for them at Arizona State. I think we're all kind of in agreement in this room that that's a place that has a lot of potential that has not used all of the weapons at their disposal.
Yeah, well, I think we're also going to agree that's been said for a really long time now.
Yeah, and so are you going to have the leaders that see that and point the resources in the right direction?
Yeah, I think in today's climate, I think it was pretty evident what the main focus is, at least right away. And I saw him responding to some tweets like, I think he was on the Pac-12 network during one of their baseball games. I know he was at the baseball game today, and they interviewed him. And so he had some tweets that he had responded to. But as far as him just outright tweeting something today, he hadn't tweeted anything in about 4 days. And the one and only thing he's tweeted was about an hour ago. And what do you think it's about?
About this?
No, it's about NIL.
Oh, okay.
It's about, Sun Devils, NIL opportunities for student athletes is one of our top priorities. We have great partners at Sun Angel NIL. You can support our Sun Devils, and he posts the link. And so he's already off to the races fundraising for NIL. So, on the job and straight to work and trying to raise funds. And, that's a big part of the athletic director's job. So that shows you kind of where the priorities are right out of the gate. If that's the first thing that he's mentioning is their NIL. So, good luck to him. I know there, like you said, there's a little bit of controversy when just the kind of the way that he was recommended, I suppose, rubbed some people the wrong way initially. But he's still the guy when all is said and done. So I was trying to look up a little bit about him, and he was with the Diamondbacks for a very long time as their chief business officer, as the VP of Special Projects. He was the chief business officer with Arizona State here most recently. So this is a promotion, but yeah, he had been with the Diamondbacks for over a decade, generated $300 million in capital projects for them. So that's obviously something that would be up Arizona State's alley as well. And they've been with the Sun Devils for the past 3 years. So, very business-oriented guy, which you have to be, and a lot of experience in the pro ranks and raising money. So, also being an Arizona State guy, I don't think that ever hurts when you have somebody who's homegrown. I don't think it's always a home run hiring the person who went to that school, but I do think that there is that element of they went there, they've got a pride in it. And so I hope that all goes well for Arizona State in this very tricky time for them, moving conferences and really moving. The culture is going to be totally different than what they've been accustomed to for many years now. So he's getting to work trying to raise money so that they can compete, and we'll see how he does. But I think this is a nice situation to have resolved now if you're Arizona State, because it has been, at least from our point of view, kind of going on for a while now.
Yeah, and they've needed a new AD for quite a long time.
Oh yeah,
even when they had one, for sure. This is I don't know, and I don't want to pile on to this Jaden Rashada thing, but I just found this interesting in that the NCAA was already investigating Florida for the Jaden Rashada thing, and particularly in the lawsuit that's come out, the thing that would have gotten Florida in the most trouble is the direct promise that's been alleged from Billy Napier of $1 million to Jaden Rashada to sign on signing day. That's the one specific rule they had, is that coaches are not supposed to be directly involved in this, which is naive and silly and nearly impossible to not do. So I'm not necessarily coming down on Billy Napier here. He's got enough problems. He doesn't need even more criticism. But what I found strange here, and Florida has three major rivals. I'll say four, because LSU and Florida is pretty good. But then, the four games they care about the most are Florida State, Tennessee, LSU, and Georgia, in whatever order, depending on how good either side is all the way around. And the fact that Tennessee's lawsuit over Nico Amaliava and the injunction happened is the first time in the history of the University of Florida that they are glad that Tennessee exists.
Yeah, probably. Unless there's some situation where they needed them to beat somebody, so they got into a better bowl game or something like that. But nothing's going to happen here. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to happen here, and it's because of what's mentioned as far as what happened with Tennessee. So that's great news for Florida fans. And as it says there at the end, that's a very fitting quote. If it wasn't for the Tennessee stuff, you'd be really worried if you were Florida. But yeah, I mean, now you don't really care. I know you would love for them to have to suffer excruciating pain for this Jaden Rashada thing. I think we got another Jaden Rashada guest tomorrow, don't we? Paul's gonna line up to talk more Jaden Rashada. But
I don't think so. I think the story is fascinating because I think it could have only happened in there's like certain situations that would have been right to happen in. Florida and Miami being as desperate as they were to get back into it.
And Miami flirted with disaster, as we saw. Like they were the first ones to really try to figure out how to look terribly somehow or another.
But like it wouldn't have happened if it was Georgia and Alabama because they would he would have tried to play them onto each other. Like, we've got like many others like you. We don't have to do this. He was like Jimbo Fisher was after Jaden Rashada. Like that's for sure. But what he didn't have on that side was another school in the same region that A&M super cares about that was also deep in on Jaden Rashada. So, Texas had Arch Manning already. So like, what do you that wouldn't have kind of affected that as much. Yeah. But I think that's one of the only other situations where you've seen the kind of like, that he's going to Miami. Well, no, we've got to get better before Miami gets better because if they get better before us, then that's more players that are going to go there. And, UCF and Florida State are already kind of getting better and like the talent pool and, we got to do this. We got to get back relevant to be relevant. And so I just don't think it would have happened in any other situation, which I think or many other situations, which is why I think it's so interesting to me. You can take out Florida and Miami in this. I mean, obviously that makes it more interesting to me, but like there's not many other, like, would you ever find Michigan and Ohio State in the same kind of desperation to get a guy and do this? Probably not.
Not in this era now because, exactly. Dude, you got to really badly screw up a hire to not be relevant if you're one of the bigger schools.
Yeah.
Everything favors you. Everything favors you. Your size of your alumni matters more than ever. The big donations matter more than ever. Like, the TV contracts matter more than ever. So there is absolutely zero excuse for any program that's been relevant and won national championships to not remain relevant now, outside of just making terrible decisions, which somebody's inevitably going to do, and which clearly Florida's done to some extent, and which Miami's flirted with and done, at times. So, it's a bad look for Florida. I don't know what to expect with them this year. I know there's a lot of differing opinions on how good they might be. But I'm very excited to see DJ Lagway at some point. I wonder how much he's getting paid. Like, how much is he getting? Because I'm sure he was interested in the Jaden Rashada numbers.
I know he's not getting $13 million because they don't have that much. But
yeah, I want to see, like, how good is Jaden Rashada really? Because I've seen glimpses at Arizona State, and that's about it now, and some high school tape. And how much is DJ Lagway getting paid? Those are some questions I have after reading this story the last couple of days. But, no, I like Billy Napier. I thought it was a really good hire at the time. But it's just like a PR blemish for Florida more than anything at this point. It's just an embarrassing story in some ways. It's not the end of the world though. Like they go out and win some games this fall, nobody's going to give a damn. Yeah. And if Lagway's great or who's there, Graham Mertz is good, which I don't know, we'll see. But we'll forget about this unless they suck again. And then this will be a bigger deal and probably get Napier fired.
Well, and look, this is just another pothole for him in the road unless they can win. And the problem is that he goes in, and this is a must-win season for him without all this BS. Like, without all this Jaden Rashada stuff, if you took it out, this is a make-or-break season for the Gators anyway, and then they've got that schedule they have.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's so, I would say, stressful for Billy Napier is, like, not only do I have to go through the toughest schedule ever, especially the back part. Like, it's not even really spread out. Like, it was tough anyway, but the back half of it is just a murderer's row. Not even the back half. Like, the back two-thirds of it is just a nightmare. So he could maybe have, like, he could see progress and their coaching staff could see progress, but they may still have a terrible record because the teams that they're all playing are all kind of ahead of where they are.
Well, that'll all depend on how that looks. Like, I mean, it's like with how many wins does Dave Aranda need to save his job? It's like, well, it depends. Like, how many wins do they get, and what do those wins look like? Is it a miserable 6 wins, and you barely scraped and got to a bowl game? Did you get, 5-1 and then have to win, the last game of the year after a terrible losing streak to get bowl eligible? Then I don't know if that saves your job just making a bowl game, right? So it's all about the style. So if Billy Napier and company are much improved, but it just doesn't turn to a terrific record right away, but it's clear, hey, they're better and they can win some games, and part of what stopped them is that they just played so many tough teams. Then the athletic director and the boosters and the rest of the folks who would have any say or any opinion on that, I think would be reasonable about that. But, yeah, the schedule does them no favors. Ultimately, you just got to go out and play good football and try to look as good as you possibly can. And I think if you look good enough, then so long as you're not 2-10, the record can kind of be negotiated a little bit, right? And that's where I sort of am with their situation, because you're not looking to fire him, I don't think, just because of the fact that you only hired him a couple years ago. You want to give a guy time to work out and especially make sure that he is or isn't the guy. So, that could come back to haunt him just in the bigger picture. But Florida just needs to go win games, and if they do that, then we won't care about Jaden Rashada.
No, it won't. Yeah. But it's another log on the fire that he's got to worry about. And finally, before we go to break, just a couple of quick transfer portal updates on some of the bigger guys that were still out there.
It's still open?
Yeah. Well, these guys just hadn't made choices. But Tyler Barron, Tennessee, I think, he almost committed to Ole Miss, and then he went to Louisville. He was at Louisville for this semester and then decided to get back in the portal. He and Penny Boone were like that in that regard. He is on his way to Miami. So Miami continues to add marquee players in the portal, and he was one of the most sought-after guys as he heads down into Dade County. And Khalil Jacobs, who's a linebacker from South Alabama, who is probably the biggest G5 player available, has not followed his former head coach, Kane Womack, to Alabama, where he is the defensive coordinator. He is now on his way to Mizzou. So a nice little pickup there for Mizzou.
Yeah, I love what momentum Missouri has right now. I mean, they are as relevant as they've been since they first got to the SEC and, made a splash making the conference title game there in that first year, and then kind of cooled off for a few years, and now have started to really grab momentum. And obviously you've got a really good quarterback. You got a terrific name in Luther Burden, who's also a pretty good player. Pretty good player. He's very good and elite at his best, but there's a lot to like about Missouri, so I'm not surprised to see folks, especially with their SEC affiliation. I think, they're in a really good spot right now to pick up nice players, so that seems like a good addition for them. And then Miami is who I expect to see in the transfer portal. I mean, at this stage, they've been a constant since the portal became a thing, right? They were the first ones to go out there in the Jaden Rashada and start making splashes, and so they seem to be loading up. And I think in their situation, it's one of luxury, but it's also the fact that they have to win too. I mean, talk about coaches in the state of Florida that need to win. I think Mario Cristobal needs to win some games this season. So yeah, they appear to be loading up, and we'll see where that can take them in an ACC where obviously Florida State's not going to be quite as good as they were a year ago, and we don't really know how good everybody else is going to be. We have feelings on Clemson or NC State being a sleeper, or how good is UNC after losing Drake May. But Miami's all in, I guess you could say, as usual with the transfer portal.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, the best non-con games, according to this infographic that we got, but we'll go through some of the big-time non-conference games that are coming up this season. That's right after this on 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak here on 365 Sports. And we've got a couple of back-to-back kind of topic segments here that ripe for the summertime. And we'll start with the best non-con games. By the way, coming up on today's show, Doug Rohan of Rohan Law on FSU versus the ACC. Mike Walsh, who is with On It, and they do NIL trading cards. Very interested to hear from him. And Max Olsen of The Athletic at 4:45. And then Craig's Off the Radar a little bit later, right after that, at around 5 o'clock. And then we've got also, if we have time, we'll talk about the SEC running backs like we did the Big 12 running backs yesterday. So here are the top 10 non-conference games of 2024. Number 1, Texas at Michigan. Number 2, SC at LSU. Notre Dame welcomes Florida State. Miami and Florida should be very interesting because that series comes back around every few years. Clemson at Georgia. Most of these are earlier in the season. I know that FSU and Notre Dame is much later. Alabama at Wisconsin. Tennessee at NC State. That's one they've played a couple times. Notre Dame's got, again on this list at Texas A&M. That's early in the year. Boise State at Oregon. And Penn State at West Virginia. Last year they played in Happy Valley. So, Craig, which of those are you most intrigued about?
Texas, Michigan.
Yeah.
I
they
think,
nailed it, right?
I think it's just I'm interested in the TV rating for that one. Mm-hmm. I don't get totally nerdy in the whole TV network stuff, but I do find some of it interesting. And you know that each week I started to just mention like the top 5 or so highest rated games. And unfortunately that turned into exactly what I predicted it was going to turn into. Did it not? In the whole bragging wars and the whole tribal wars of this conference versus that conference, just talking about TV ratings suddenly turned into like firing arrows the other direction instead of just being a fun exercise. And so I'm going to continue it as a fun exercise and not like a Big Ten sucks, look at that. But I am fascinated to know the rating for this Michigan-Texas game. Obviously, it loses a little bit of its luster, just the turnover on both teams. Although Texas, I think, suffered far less than what Michigan did. But then again, Texas lost 100 players to the NFL draft. So they suffered plenty in terms of star power. But I just feel like, and maybe it's just because we're more familiar with them, and also they have their quarterback coming back, so you can kind of start there, and a lot of their O-line, that they just appear to be in a stronger place. But I think that's going to be really, really interesting as far as an early season game goes at the Big House. And like we mentioned, I think those two teams have only played, the one time when was in the Rose Bowl? They have never played home and home. I know that. But they've barely ever played for two programs that are right there, like top 5, top 10 all-time, whatever you want to mention, wins, everything else. They're right there in that tier. So, that's going to be a really cool just atmosphere, early season college football. But I would have loved to have seen like this in a playoff game last year. I think that would have been pretty sweet with all the faces that they had. But, Michigan's obviously turning over a lot, and so is Texas. So it'll be a little bit different. But this is also interesting because this is a game where you, in years past, maybe go, man, whoever loses this is really behind the 8 ball. Not in the expanded playoff era. Like, it really doesn't mean anything at all unless you lose about 3 more games.
Well, and look, I think the only reason it would mean anything at all as an individual game is if one team blows out the other.
Yeah.
Like, just really shreds them. Then it'll be like, oh, well.
Yeah, then otherwise it's just like, oh, it was a close game. It was in week.
Well, and particularly for Michigan, Michigan's schedule is harder this year than it was last year, obviously, because Texas is on it. But particularly for Michigan, if they get blown out at home by Texas, they don't have as many opportunities down the stretch to make it right as where if Texas loses this game, and we saw last year against Alabama, they had opportunities to make it right. Of course, they won out until the playoff, but if Texas loses, they have maybe some more opportunities to make it right down the line in their schedule.
Yeah, but then again, that's kind of where their lackluster schedule sort of potentially comes back to bite them, but not really because, unless they lose again, like another 2-3 games on top of that, it doesn't matter who wins or loses that game, really. I mean, it will as far as seeding goes, but in terms of it being, I guess my point being like this albatross that you lost that early season game, you can't afford to lose anymore. Or if you lose one more, it better be like 2 Oklahoma in a close game. Like, those days are dead, man.
Yeah.
Those days are over. And so that's just going to be a weird difference this year compared to, I don't know, the entire time I've watched college football in my life. So, that's definitely a different element to some of these bigger games this year. But, I mean, Texas has good teams on their schedule. It's just not like, I mean, they've got an opportunity, though, to beat an Oklahoma, a Georgia. And then beyond that, I mean, in terms of teams we know are going to be good, it's kind of few and far between because we don't know about Florida. Kentucky should be good, but like to what extent are they going to be good?
Who's A&M?
Who's A&M at the end of the year? I mean, they could be like who the hell knows where they are at the end of the year. So, they don't have as many big-time opponents, even with that SEC schedule, to bounce back. Although you beat Georgia, you beat Oklahoma, and you're going to be feeling really good about things. And that game just I think is going to be great. And the only time they've ever played was that Rose Bowl when Vince played the hero, and then they went on to win the national championship against USC the next year. So that was a very relevant game, and it'd be hard to top that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett, what are your feelings on SC versus LSU? This is of these games, like I can tell you like my confidence level in each team on this list, except for these two, because both new quarterbacks, lots of guys kind of in and out. LSU lost a ton of offensive talent. I think they'll be better on defense. They should be smarter with Harold Perkins. USC could be really good. Lincoln Riley's, never had a team that's been god-awful. They're coming off a weird year, and Caleb Williams is gone, and so that's the one I have the least amount of idea about.
Yeah, that's what, like, looking at it, I can understand it making this list, but number 2 makes no sense to me because neither one of these teams, like, there was so much turnover for LSU. You had so much going into the draft. You're breaking in a new quarterback. You have a new defensive coordinator. With USC, like, we have no idea what Lincoln Riley is going to look like without a proven quarterback who's already of the caliber of a Heisman candidate. And, like, defensively, what is USC going to look like? Like, it can't get no worse than what it has been. I don't really know what to make of this game. I understand why it's being pumped up because of the brand power with it. But if you actually dive into the details, man, like, I don't think this is going to be that great of a game ultimately.
I would maybe put Georgia and Clemson to me as
I
my
think
number
West
2.
Virginia, Penn State would be a better game at 2 than over that one. Personally, that's just me.
Yeah, I think I think Garrett's got very valid points. I'm just trying to think in my head like how I would rearrange them if I was going to attempt to do that. Which I'm the type of dude that I have to have like pen and paper to visualize things. But yeah, no, I definitely see where that's just the logos, and you're going, oh, that's Southern Cal and LSU. But there are a lot of questions. Like, we haven't seen Lincoln Riley. I guess we did at the end of the year, the bowl game. No Caleb Williams, but Caleb's been his guy for 3 seasons now, and it's a different era there at SC, different defensive coordinators, Garrett mentioned, and then LSU loses a ton of firepower. Yeah. Jaden Daniels, all those great receivers. So, yeah, that'll be interesting just for, like, who is either one of these teams early on in the year. But, yeah, I could see not having that as, like, the must-watch number 2 conference game or non-conference game. I think Texas-Michigan's number 1 very clearly as far as a must-watch goes. But you can make the case for a lot of these others to – I mean, Penn State, West Virginia, I'm glad you mentioned them because that's definitely not going to be mentioned in the top 5 for probably most people. But I think in terms of just, like – just like good old-fashioned just college football rivalry and hatred and wanting, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's going to be a great game from that standpoint, and especially in Morgantown, West Virginia's got some confidence after last year. It's early enough to where your season hasn't been spoiled, and so you still believe you have, like, you know, you're pretty good when that time comes. And so, yeah, that one's going to be a lot of fun and potentially a great launching pad for the Mountaineers, although I'm sure Penn State will still be favored when the time rolls around. But, yeah, I like that matchup a lot. Oh, Notre Dame A&M, I feel like they've played 1,000 times in my lifetime. Yeah. But I am very curious about it. Bowl games
against each other.
Yeah, and a lot of bowl games. It seems like every other year they played in a bowl game when I was younger. But that one I'm intrigued by just because of Mike Elko and the new era in College Station. I'm very interested in that. And then Notre Dame's obviously expected to be pretty good. So, yeah, I would have that one a little bit higher, just my own personal taste.
Look, Florida State at Notre Dame is Riley Leonard's chance to make right a game that, you know, if he was healthy,
they would have won.
Yeah, probably.
Would have beat them.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he doesn't get hurt. That doesn't get derailed.
And that's what the committee took into account when they decided that Florida State should be in the College World Playoff.
Yeah, but and that was
undefeated.
Yeah, unconquered.
Yeah, unconquered.
But yeah, I'm very intrigued. Like, we'll see how DJ Uiagalelei adjusts to the offense at Florida State. But that should, I mean, it's in the middle. This is in November, so that's a huge one for both those schools down the stretch.
Yeah, just hope they're both, like, all those guys are playing at that point in time in November. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Riley Leonard's going to have another shot, and if I'm Mike Norvell, I'm like, of all the places you could have gone, like, could you have gone somewhere else that we don't play next year?
Right. Yeah.
Just because he was trying to go out there on not one leg, like half a leg. He was like, no, I can go back in. And they had to send that. I remember watching it, and I remember having so much admiration for his guts. But they had to literally send the doctor over there and go, Riley, we cannot put you in the game.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm fine. I know you think you're fine. I'm telling you, you're not. Just trust my medical knowledge. And yeah, that was as gutsy as something as I've ever seen. I do think Clemson and Georgia is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
This is a very key moment for Cade Klubnik.
Dude, if Georgia wins that game by like 30, I mean, you talk about the Dabo stuff, way that it's already bubbling. I mean, that would go to straight boil. I mean, I guess that's the same thing, right? It's already bubbling, but it's kind of percolating. The bubbles are starting to come to the surface, but it would be like turn it to a 9.
Yeah, like you have the nice little
simmer.
Light boil, you know, that's like little bubbles. It would be like full on.
Crank it up. Yeah, and throw some ramen in there once it gets going. Yeah. That one's very intriguing too, Georgia Clemson, because where is Clemson in the big picture against a team like Georgia compared to, you know, the confidence levels you would have had pre-NIL in this matchup? Like, you'd probably, Clemson can roll in and win this game, and now there's just so many doubts about them. So, man, what win would that be for
Dabo?
Jesus,
if he pulls it off, I mean, it would be huge because he can go like, see, You know, and look, Seth Emerson wrote a great column today in The Athletic about how Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney's portal processes aren't really all that different. The only difference between the two, the two of them, is that Kirby Smart isn't completely opposed to it. You know, he's like, all right. And look, they won their first national championship without taking somebody in the portal, but that was more like that was early on, and they were already loaded for bear and ready to go. But then after that, they've taken plenty. So they won their second one with several portal guys. You know.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. No. I mean, you're right. So if you were picking like 3 games, let's just do it that way. So we kind of like I guess see what our favorites would be, because I'd say Texas, Michigan, Georgia, Clemson. And then, man, that third one is hard. I'm kind of split between, and we give no love to Tennessee, NC State, although that could be great. Like Alabama, Wisconsin, there's a lot of just mystery there, especially with the coaching change. I mean, primarily because of the coaching change. And Wisconsin got so much early love last year with Luke Fickell's hiring. That ought to be really fun at Camp Randall. So, yeah, I have a hard time, but I think those top 2 are pretty clear for me, Georgia, Clemson, and Texas, Michigan at number 1.
Yeah. All right, let's see.
I'll go Penn State, West Virginia.
Okay. All right.
I would go Michigan, Texas, number 1, Penn State, West Virginia, and then I would go Florida and Miami just for the intrigue.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go wrong. I think whatever your list is, like there's no wrong answer. Yeah.
I'm gonna disqualify Florida State and Notre Dame because I would be interested in that. Like if it wasn't on this list, like it wouldn't matter. I mean, it's always going to interest me. But I would say number 1, Texas at Michigan, number 2, Georgia or Clemson at Georgia, and number 3, I'm with Miami and Florida early on in the year because that's going to be a huge test for. Look, and we know that like Florida is not going to be picked to win that game even at home. I don't think, given that, but it's going to be a really narrow spread. If Miami is really as good as they think they're going to be, this should be a game where they can go maybe make a statement in a very tough place to play. No matter how bad Florida's been, the Swamp is not an easy place to go into and win. So if they can go into the Swamp and win, that's gonna show a lot of things about the potential this Miami team could have with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez and Colby Young and like all the guys that they picked up in the portal and brought back, and Tyler Barron now to go on that defense. So
I'll tell you what too, if Miami loses that opening game, that's already going to start to make things feel really weird. And then they got South Florida like the later in the month, and USF's going to be probably pretty good. Like I think they're a team that's been mentioned quite a bit as being a little bit of a sleeper. So yeah, Miami's got to be mindful of that first month of the season.
And here's the other thing about Florida. Okay, like Miami has USF, Florida has UCF, and that will be the most important game that UCF has ever played.
You think so?
Yes, because of what they're trying to prove to the world and what, to their fans at least, what those 3 schools mean.
Right.
Like what it means to be in the group with those schools. It'll be a big deal. Their fans will be rip roaring ready to go for it.
I ask why, just because they beat them a couple years ago. Yeah, they beat them in that bowl game.
But this 2 years ago. But this one is in the regular season.
Right.
Like UCF has loaded up its roster.
They're in the Big 12 now.
They're in the Big 12. Like this is a power versus power thing. So
yeah,
I think I'm trying to think.
I don't know UCF well enough to know like this is the biggest whatever without like questioning myself a little bit. So because I know they've had to have, like I know that bowl game versus Miami or versus Florida was a big deal. It was a Gasparilla Bowl, I think is what that was. Because I remember seeing the meme. Remember that girl who wore her UCF shirt on the work meeting with the Florida guy? Yeah, they had like the backdrop was the score.
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, I recall that, and it was funny at the time that she was bragging like that on a work call. I think it was during COVID. That's why everybody was on Zoom.
Hey, MC Gusto, UCF fan, says, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, Paul. So, yeah, it's big. It's big for them. Here's the thing. The bowl game now, especially in the modern parlance of bowl games, the Gators have an excuse. Like, it was the bowl game.
Oh, we're in the bowl game.
It was the bowl game. It was, it was end of the bad season. Guys opted out. Blah blah blah.
Florida State was like, we missed out on the playoff, and our guys wanted to play.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
different situation. I mean, one was egregious, one was just happened. But you have that built-in excuse, and but there's no built-in excuse. It's the regular season. It's it's a game that everybody's going to care about and watch in the state of Florida.
Yeah, no, that'll be big for sure, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of eyes on that. Yeah, because it's either way that goes, whoever's on the losing end of that will be feeling pretty down pretty quickly right out of the gates. So yeah, that's a big must-needed win, I think, for both Cristobal and Napier. But yeah, I'm looking forward to all these. I mean, Boise, Oregon's getting no love really, but I mean, it is what on a list. Somebody's got to be at the bottom of the interest level.
Hey, Malachi Nelson versus Dylan Gabriel. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be interested in that game. I wouldn't have it top 3 necessarily. And that third spot, really, I could go. Like you could ask me tomorrow, and I'd change my pick to Florida State, Notre Dame, or something. But I think those top 2 are pretty clear in terms of just ramifications and just kind of history, particularly with the Texas and Michigan game, just because we've never seen that outside of the Rose Bowl a few years back. But yeah, looking forward to it, excited about it, and wish we could fast forward a couple of months to start this all revving up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Garrett, we'll save best teams not in the CFP for later because we've got to get to Doug Rohan in the next segment. Doug Rohan, Rohan Law, comes up next on FSU versus the ACC. This is 365 Sports.
TexasBeefHouse.com marketing director had an incredible online auction, live auction, of course, in the month of April. There'll be another one just around the corner. But May, people start to get out on the grills. The weather's cleared up. You got a special throughout and some ideas for the month of May.
So May, we consider May, June, and July as grilling month. We've got our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular Wagyu hamburger patties, our garlic links. 2 things that people aren't usually familiar with are our flap steak and flank steak. Those are a large piece of meat that you can cut up and eat with a fajita, or a lot of people will just cut it up and eat like a normal steak. This is our favorite time of the year because it's the perfect weather to get outside and get that grill going.
In the end, did you guys have another great auction? Did it all go well?
We had another fun auction. We had Wagyu brisket at this auction. It was phenomenal. We had so many customers that were so excited. They've given us their feedback on Facebook. We've got a lot of exciting things coming with a new platform that we've got going called Bid on Beef that we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. We're really excited about what the future holds for us.
TexasBeefHouse.com. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, premium grade East Texas beef from their pasture to your plate. They'll deliver it to you locally. They bring it directly to your door. Farm-raised Wagyu beef. May grilling month, May, June, and July, and there's not a better place to find what you want to put on the grill, whether it's hamburgers, flank, or flap steak. Samantha, there's always that code to get a discount.
Yes, absolutely. Use the code SICK'EM10, SICK'EM10, and get 10% off your order of $100 or more.
TexasBeefHouse.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sick'em 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sick'em365.com.
We are awaiting our guest, Doug Rohan from Rohan Law, who's, if you've seen him do some stuff on some other channels, he was with John Kurtz, I think, last week, and John's our buddy. But I thought this would be a good week to get him on because, again, in the FSU's had a new filing this week, so Doug will be in just a second, and we'll have him on the air here as soon as he gets linked up on video and set up. But, yeah, it's we were going to talk about the best teams not ever to make the CFP, but we'll push that to a little bit later. We also have we did Big 12 running backs. We can do SEC running backs later in the show, but we're about to hit a run of segments here with Doug and then Mike Walsh and Max Olsen off the radar. So we're going to roll through this 4 o'clock hour and into 5, just back to back with certain things. And, kind of curious about Doug's perspective on this. He's got a lot of good information on the FSU versus the ACC trial that's going on in Florida, and then how it kind of all connects together. So he's been following it very, very well. So looking forward to hearing from him here in a minute. But this. Again, we should do the College Football Legal Minute sponsored by somebody, because we have something every day that we can talk about.
Yeah, and I don't love that, but it is what it is. It's a part of the deal. And so, I mean, there are parts that I do find interesting. It just seems like there is like a daily, like really another legal case to talk about, but it's great for lawyers. It's great for, Mitt Winter and guys like that. And, yeah, I saw the interview that Doug Rohan did with John Kurtz. That was really good stuff. I'm going to default to you mostly because you're the Florida State guy who's probably got a lot of the questions. And I'm kind of up to date, I feel like, on most things. But we'll see what he has to say, and I'll jump in as I feel. But, it's certainly interesting comments from Michael Alford the other day that were swirling around Florida State AD that just seemed to, like, when this was sort of quieting down, kind of stirred the pot back up again. Outside of just the legal things that are ongoing, when you got the AD basically – not saying, no, we're not going to do this, or yes, we are going to do this, but just kind of leaving it open to interpretation. That leads a lot of people to speculate. And I think a lot of the speculation points and a lot of the obvious common sense points to, Florida State. I mean, we know Florida State wants out, but that's clearly the motive, and we'll see how quickly they can get there. But this court stuff continues to play out, and it's not like the courts are worried about college football fans getting their fix of getting to see realignment, close up this phase. They are going to take their time, so that's why this is something where you could see a settlement and this thing's over just out of nowhere, or if it's, another couple years, I don't think that was come as a surprise either. So that's why the whole, it's happening, I kind of shy away from that. There's always the chance that, again, they could come to a settlement, but I feel like you're going to get a little bit of a tease of that's maybe percolating, or that's around the corner, which we don't really have that yet. No. But who knows if they get into a room and can hammer some things out.
Yeah. Garrett, just give me the thumbs up.
All right, still wait.
So, yeah, he emailed us, said he was setting up now. So we'll get him going in just a minute. But it's it's one of those things, and that's the tragedy of the internet is this was full of, this is going to be argued out by attorneys in front of a judge. So what one side believes and what the other side believes is that's where the court case lies. If, the evidence that's provided will point you in one direction or the other. That's why, especially now especially you see a lot of high profile cases, you hear what you think the evidence is, but the evidence itself will come out in the full transcripts. And so we only get little bits and pieces as the public. And we're like, oh man, this is this way. And I think the thing that, excites the legal part of the internet is that there are interesting arguments to be made here. And that's what lawyers like. They like finding the spot that this is an interesting take on this. Florida State says that this is how this should be interpreted because of these factors, and the ACC says no because they believe one thing or the other. So yeah, it's interesting. It kind of just depends on, I guess, what side you want to read, because I read Florida State fans a lot, and they seem to think they've got an ironclad exit out of the ACC, and I read other fans, and they do not have an ironclad exit out of the ACC. No, I don't think so.
No, and clearly they don't, because if they did, they'd already be out of there. Their clear exit is to pay a lot of money to get out of the conference. That's their clear exit. But I would ask you this question. I know you're trying to get Doug launched here, but if Florida State doesn't get left out of the playoff, are we not still doing this?
We're still doing it.
Exactly.
It's probably just
so, like, this whole thing about, the playoff forced them to do. I mean, it made them move quicker, but they were going to do this anyways. It's not like they were going to stick around.
The playoff made it louder. The playoff was what they can say as to when everybody's like, yeah, but you guys, like, they'll say, no, this is why this is an emergency.
Right, yeah.
Like, otherwise, it's maybe not an emergency so much because, you know, they would have, I mean, if they were 10-2 and weren't going to be in the playoff anyway, they would still say, well, we feel like we need to make this move like Clemson is doing right now.
Right.
But Florida State's side of it is, well, no, we definitely have to because look what just happened. What if we do go 10-2 and get left out because we're the second place team in the ACC and they're only going to take one of us? Like, we can't take that risk with the only thing that's important to us.
Now, I'm not a legal guy. Obviously, I probably don't need to remind everybody that all the time, but I just say that just so if somebody just pops in and hears me talking, they're like, you don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but it just seems to me like you signed a contract. Like, that's where I fall in, so I'm just that black and white of like, well, they signed a contract for their grant of rights, but I've also now heard several arguments as to why holes could get poked in that, and that's clearly what Florida State's trying to do right now is poke holes in that argument. So it's not as clear as it seems to be in my head of you signed through this date and, you handed over your rights and all of that. It's much more complicated, so it's good to have folks who can kind of maneuver through all that because I know I would have a hard time trying to explain a lot of the legal stuff if I had to. So glad that we have a handful of folks like Mitt Winter yesterday that can help us kind of parse through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Garrett, why don't we hit that third break right here so I can just get his phone number and call him if we're not I'm here. Oh, is he in now?
No, just call.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just go ahead and let's hit the third break, and that way I can call him.
Memorial Day sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco is pulling out all the stops with incredible deals you won't want to miss. Picture yourself behind the wheel of a sleek and powerful 2023 Dodge Charger or Challenger RT. Right now, you can drive home with a whopping $14,000 off MSRP. That's right, $14,000 off. How about a 2024 Ram 1500 Limited Crew Cab 4-wheel drive for $11,500 off the MSRP? That's right, $11,500 in savings only at Allen Samuels of Waco.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
When your business depends on technology to stay on track, you need professional IT services you can trust. Carry On Solutions offers managed IT services, network professional consulting services, and cybersecurity. Carry On Solutions expert team handles M365 and Azure migrations, Active Directory assessments, security assessments and hardening, Exchange migrations, Windows Server upgrades, Veeam backup and recovery solutions, and more. In a world where technology Technology is constantly evolving and security is an ever-ending concern. Carry On Solutions will keep your business running by minimizing risk, downtime, and giving you peace of mind. For more information, email sales@carryonsolutions.com or contact carryonsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, finally. Doug Rohan of Rohan Law joins us now. And Doug, you've done a lot of, for a case you're not on, you've done a lot of work on this FSU versus ACC and the offshoots of it. Obviously, Clemson's involved in this now, and I'm sure that we'll see UNC eventually if half their boosters get their way. But what is the newest filing, and what changed from the original one, because they were told that they had to kind of revise what they were arguing against the ACC?
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to be on here. You asked about 3 different subtle questions in your intro, so I appreciate that. I was accused of being a grifter on one of the other YouTube channels today. If so, I'd like to know where they're sending the checks, because they have not come to my office yet. I'm doing this out of a labor of love. I love the law. I represent clients in Atlanta, Georgia, and I love breaking down the law for them and easy to digest and understand pieces. And so I also love Florida State. I'm not going to lie. I am a homer, and if somebody wants to discount me because of that, then that's fine. I'm not here to blow smoke up everybody's butts, but I am here to provide a perspective of where this bus has been. I'm not going to tell you where the bus is going to go, because that's beyond my capacity and my experience. But I'm just trying to break down what is happening in a way that our fans can understand and know what the terms mean, what the process means. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to me. What we're at right now is a second amended complaint that Florida State filed this week. And what they've done is they've started over basically from scratch, incorporating some of the things that they learned from the first hearings and some of the things that they learned from the Clemson filing.
So, by the way, also a homer as well. So I've been accused of that many times. We'll be in solidarity together.
Excellent.
So, no, but in this, there's a lot of, fire and vitriol from the FSU side of, fans about this and about leaving the ACC. And we were talking about just before you came on about, they were going to do this anyway, whether the playoff thing happened or not. That just put a little more hot sauce on it. So there's been a lot of interest. What is Florida State's central argument to that the grant of rights is not beholden to them forever?
So it really is fascinating. And people who are upset about this, or who are, saying you signed the contract, you just got to live with the contract. Well, you're discounting an entire area of practice that is designed around determining what is valid in a contract. What does the contract say? So this is very routine and very common. Of course, we all heard the news reports when the contract was signed, and we've seen the headlines from various writers over the year about this being ironclad and about this being an irrevocable grant of rights. But once you actually look beyond the first line of the document and actually look into what the words say, they matter. And in this particular case, the grant of rights, in the first paragraph describing the grant of rights, names ESPN specifically 9 different times. And so what that means is that we right off the bat have a limited grant of rights, and that is it grants the ACC the rights of each member to negotiate with ESPN. So if we don't have ESPN in the picture, there is no grant of rights. So that right there is objectively clear for everyone to see. It's not negotiable. What the further arguments are, we could get into a little bit later, but that should make everybody stop and take a look and realize maybe those things that we've been told over the last 10 years are not true.
What There's no obviously smoking gun, otherwise that would be kind of over. But what is the likelihood that there are things that Clemson will find because they get to see the TV contract, in its entirety, that will help both these sides navigate their arguments?
So what we have in the second amended complaint from Florida State and in the complaint from Clemson are allegations. These are simply statements from both legal counsels to the judge. This is what we intend to prove in this case. So you're right. Those aren't evidence. That isn't the end all be all in proving your case, but attorneys are very careful to try to not overstate what evidence they have. Both parties have seen the ESPN agreement with the ACC. It wasn't included yet as an exhibit in either of the documents, so we, Joe Public, haven't seen it, but the attorneys have. And so I can have a little bit of confidence in the recitation and the statements of both the attorneys that essentially what they're saying is, look, we've already talked about this first part. ESPN is the linchpin to the ACC's grant of rights. The grant of rights allows the ACC to do whatever is necessary to fulfill the ESPN broadcast agreement. Well, I'm suspecting that what we're going to learn is that ESPN agreement is written in such a way that it allows ESPN to broadcast ACC member games, physically home games. Well, if that's the extent of the language, if there's no other language in there, then Clemson and now Florida State are arguing we can leave the ACC. And once we leave the ACC, ESPN loses the right to broadcast our games. And as soon as ESPN loses the right to broadcast our games, it's not a requirement for us to fulfill the grant of rights, because the grant of rights is only to do those things that the ACC is required to do in order to broadcast games on ESPN.
Is that something that a judge will buy? I mean, that
again, we have to see the ESPN agreement before I can opine, that far, state that strongly. But that's what's being argued, and it certainly makes logical sense if the evidence supports those statements.
Why would it be important outside of the trade secrets argument that ESPN has made, and for the ACC to maybe not go back and see some of the ways that things were done, particularly on the Raycom end in this television deal? Why is it so important for those things not to be out in the record for them?
So I was at the North Carolina hearing in Mecklenburg County the first time this came up back in, I guess it was April, back in April. And the ESPN attorneys were there at the request of Judge Bledsoe, and they made a very strong argument. First off, this agreement has never, ever, ever in the history of ESPN been made public. And that's important because we see a lot of headlines about what these deals said, but those deals or those articles are always couched on, based on anonymity or based on a promise not to disclose the source, or it's alleged to be worth $3 billion in the new SEC contract. We don't actually see the agreements. So there is some validity in saying, look, we're negotiating certain details with certain partners. If Fox were to get this information, if Apple TV were to get this information, they would have a competitive advantage over us. Now, they call it trade secrets because that's what the exception is to the public disclosure. So they have to call it trade secrets. But really what they're arguing is we don't want the details of each of these deals coming to public light. So that's what ESPN is trying to protect against.
Doug, I'm the moron on the show when it comes to the legalese stuff. So you're fascinating, and I love listening to it because I just learn a lot. One of the questions that I've had that I hope you can clear up is, with the kind of the dueling lawsuits, how does that work from a timing perspective in terms of, like, if one finishes before the other, is there an importance to one finishing first as opposed to another state? Like, can you kind of clear up just with those both ongoing, if it matters timing-wise, which one happens or how that kind of all occurs?
So first, we're looking at the two lawsuits of Florida State and North Carolina, or Florida State and the ACC in North Carolina.
Right.
Between those two, obviously, both parties believe their home state is an advantageous area locale to have the hearing. What Clemson does is it introduces South Carolina to the process, which also doesn't have the sunshine law complications that exist in Florida and are currently one of the things that is slowing the Florida case down some. So between North Carolina and Florida State, if one of the courts of appeal or Supreme Courts doesn't decide that this should be in the other state, then yes, both states are on a race to the finish line to see who finishes first, because under the Constitution's full faith and credit clause, whatever decision or judgment in one state must be then respected by the other state. But then you throw in Clemson, who's not a party to either the North Carolina or Florida lawsuit, and you simply have a third party that is trying the same issues, the same themes to perhaps a conclusion in a third state. What's going to happen there is that whatever happens to the lawsuits for Clemson or Florida State is largely going to be reapplied to anybody that is interested in leaving. That's how it's most likely going to play out.
Okay, so that answers, I think, my other question, which was, it wouldn't be necessary for anybody else like North Carolina now to like jump into the fray or somebody else. Like, you can kind of just sit back for these other members and just watch these play out, right? And you'll have your answer rather than applying any other external pressure.
Well, we saw the articles that came out yesterday from one investigative journalist talking about the tax implications of all the ACC championship games and contests taking place in North Carolina and their tax breaks. So that has to be a third metric that's included in deciding what's going to happen with North Carolina. But you have their internal squabbling where they don't really know who's in charge. And then you add to it a second complication of not having the money. They just reported a $17 million deficit last year. So North Carolina, on the one hand, probably would like to just sit back and watch and see what happens. But let's marry that position with what was coming out of Amelia Island in the last meetings and the suggestion that the ACC has no motivation to settle. If the ACC doesn't want to engage in any settlement negotiations, then it would behoove North Carolina to start the litigation process, because that will then add pressure to the ACC to resolve this on a more timely basis. The parties have the right to settle the dispute at any point, though I suspect that's probably more likely after the season starts. But a litigation of these issues, the true lawsuit going to a jury, going through the entire process, you're talking about probably 2 or 3 years before these cases come to a judgment.
That being said, are they, outside of the time, are they just motivated in that, doing any kind of discovery in this case, obviously for the ACC and ESPN, is something they don't want to do, especially if they lose that part of it, and the agreement can become public. And just for Florida State and Clemson, that there might be some things that come out that don't make them look all that great in this process either, that this does wind up with a settlement that's palatable for both sides? Well, it's actually going to be a settlement that's not palatable for both sides. That's when you have a successful agreement. When nobody is happy, that's when you have a true outcome that is typical. What needs to be determined by the ACC is not what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but what's going to happen in the next 20 years. That's the question they need to answer. If I was advising them, if they asked for my opinion, or if I was one of the attorneys in the boardroom, Clemson and Florida State are out the door. So what are we going to do about that? Do we pocket $200 million, $300 million from each one and share that with our remaining members? A, we've made the price tag so high that nobody else can afford to get out. B, we've mitigated the damage of losing our 2 major football players, knowing that our ESPN contract is going to be for substantially less. And 3, let's focus on being the premier basketball program or institution that the ACC has been designed to be from the beginning. Nobody in the program, in the conference, took football seriously. They brought Florida State in thinking that would elevate all the other teams. And what has Miami done in the last 20 years? Nothing. So obviously the tobacco road schools did not want to invest regularly and routinely in football. So give up the ghost and just become the best basketball conference possible with several $100 million in your bank account. What do you think is $200 million the number? Is that a palatable number for those two? Or, I mean, like...
I believe so. I don't know. I have talked to the athletic director. I've talked to the booster president. They haven't told me anything other than high five, keep it going. I don't have any inside information. I don't know what they're going to want to do. But if the risk is stay in the conference to drag this litigation out 2 or 3 years, the math works for anything under $300 million. Now, if the number is $300 million, then obviously it's a wash. So you want it to be something less. But basically over the next 10 years, if there's a $30 million difference in pay, then that's where the number is at about $300 million. Now you add to that the college football playoffs now. You add to it this getting hosed by, or not hosed, but the agreement for the House litigation. The numbers grow exponentially very quickly. So I think the math works for Florida State to pony up 200, maybe even 250 million for the opportunity to be out sooner rather than later.
And then is this where private equity comes in, or private capital?
It's an interesting development. Yeah, it's an interesting development. I don't know what their expectations are. I mean, look, Florida State has had to retain their coach and pay a premium. They had to promise to invest in several ways to keep Coach Norvell, in addition to the football-only facility that they've already broken ground on. They're in the middle of a stadium remodel. So Florida State already had some pretty hefty, high price tag items in their shopping cart to begin with. So I think that's where the private equity is going to have to come in if they want to move along and expedite this process. Of course, the settlement can include payment over 10 years or 5 years or anything that is, again, agreeable by both parties. But it certainly seems that that's what they've been setting up for the opportunity to do.
It is. What, Doug, just your opinion? I'm not again, we have no idea where they would wind up. Really, we know where the two options that they're going for. But where do you think those schools would be best wound up, or do you think what is the real option for them?
Before the college football playoff snub, I would have said that ESPN and the SEC would have been the best option. That would make sense for ESPN to protect the territory, keep Fox out of the South. ESPN would get to keep the package family of Clemson and Florida State, just move it from one conference to the other. But I think there's a lot of bad blood for how all of that went down and for Florida State being left off the playoffs. So I think there's a lot of people that would rather see Fox take over and have us on that big noon Sunday game that's being broadcast out of Penn State, to start the 2026 season. It's, 1A and 1B at the end of the day. I would prefer personally for road trips to have Ole Miss and Arkansas on the schedule. And as a season ticket holder, I would love to be having, Alabama and Tennessee come to Doak Campbell Stadium. But if it's a matter of getting out, and we just saw the numbers this week, the Big Ten actually grossed more than the SEC did. Just get me in one of those two. I really don't care at this point.
Speaking of road trips, are you going to make the road trip to SMU?
No, we are going to Ireland instead. I would have liked to have gone to SMU, but Dallas is a neat place, and I think you're going to get a lot of Seminoles out there. Frankly, of the three editions, I think SMU is going to be the tougher of the three games. I would put that right now fourth in the list of tough games on Florida State's schedule in the coming year. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. We're 90 miles away, so I'm going to that one. So, but yeah, I was hoping we could link up there. I have not been able to wrangle Ireland though, so I wish I could. But yeah, Dallas is wonderful, but again, there's no Blarney Stone, so I get it. Doug, thanks so much, and love to have you on again as things develop over time. It's my pleasure. I don't think this is going to be going away anytime soon, so let me know the next time you have some important questions, and I'd love to hop on with you guys.
Yeah, great stuff, Doug. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. That's Doug Rohan, Rohan Law there, and who broke it down. And he simplified it because, again, this stuff is really complicated. So interesting to see what the arguments will be on down the line. All right, we got another guest coming up here in just a second, Mike Walsh. And
yeah, I was going to say I appreciate his time. It is interesting, and it's good to have, like I've been saying, whether it's Doug or if it's Mitwinter or kind of the handful of people that you kind of see on Twitter more often than not, or quoted in articles and stuff. It's good to just pick their brains and kind of get some explanations, because when you just read it at the surface, at least for me, and I can't imagine that I'm alone here, it just gets very confusing very quickly, especially the more legalese terms that they use. Like, does this matter? Does it not matter? Is this important? Is it not important? It's hard to tell sometimes to what degree things matter or the level of importance. And so any thing from just the most recent refiling of like, oh my God, what's happening? It's like, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's part of the process. And as he said, like, that process could play out for a lot longer. But obviously there are some key dates coming up over the summer and whatnot, as far as the ACC and all that. So, yeah, I think, like he said it best, this is not going away for a while.
No.
Although that'd be great news for everybody. And I did find it interesting, though. I hadn't thought about I find a lot of that interesting because it clears up a lot and just makes it make better sense for me. But the Florida State, if they had their way decision, and the way he explained it about after what happened with ESPN, that, yeah, the SEC seems like it would make a lot more sense, but now you'd prefer the Big Ten. I hadn't thought about it from that standpoint of a Florida State fan, but that seems absolutely like that's totally reasonable and spot on, probably, I would think, for a lot of Florida State fans, that they don't trust ESPN any longer, so not going to want to stay in bed with them. You're going to want to get out and go somewhere where you feel like you're going to have some respect. So, yeah, that does make sense to make them more of a Big Ten lean maybe than an SEC lean.
Yeah, I think that's the bitterness that still exists there. But if I could put that behind me, if I could put that behind me, and you're telling me that,
what he just said, I can go to Tuscaloosa or Gainesville or wherever and play conference games. You'd much rather do that.
Or what I'm more interested in is I'm more interested to see Florida State even play Missouri or Kentucky than I would be to see them play Indiana or Purdue. I mean, that's just how it is. Like,
Thank you for not picking on Rutgers.
No, I mean, Nebraska would be interesting. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, yeah. Penn State, interesting, great. But then you get into the Minnesotas and the Michigan States of the world, and I'm not disrespecting them. Just as a fan, I'd rather. It's just not as interesting to me as it would be to schools that are
Ole Miss,
that are 3 hours away.
Yeah, Ole Miss and Auburn and schools like that. Yeah,
Auburn especially, that would be a great one. So
Florida State would make a ton of sense in the SEC. I know there's the whole thing about, well, you already have a school in Florida, and it's like, yeah, they already have a school in Texas. They still wanted more of Texas. Like, what are you talking about?
Absolutely. Mike Walsh joins us now from On. And if you're not familiar with On It, they are NIL trading cards. And Mike, I don't know how old you are, but when I was a youth, in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, it was the boom of the trading card industry. So it was one of my favorite things to do. And then it just went away for like 20 years. And then in the last couple of years, it's boomed again because of kind of the newfound ways of doing the business. What was On It's, perspective goal on bringing this into college athletes for NIL opportunities? Because it's something, even going back, like I remember having like a couple of college trading cards back in the day, but they weren't very good. It was weird. It was kind of off-brand stuff. So for you guys to get into this, what was the overall goal?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on. It sounds like you've probably gotten me beat by a couple of years, but definitely know the boom and bust that you're talking about there. And, the boom that came again with COVID and everything else really came at the exact right time for a company like On It to look at the college space with NIL coming along right at the same time and say, how do you make this work? How can you actually make it work in the college space? And for us, we knew that the big dogs in the industry were going to find their way to make it work within their framework. And we had the opportunity to create a new framework and create a new market. And for us, that was hyper-local, that was team-specific, that was creating products that a fan base would want to buy because they follow their team, right? And the players are a huge part of that, which is why they get compensated, and we make sure they're well compensated to be a part of what we're doing. And the fans are going to chase the athletes they want. But ultimately, we believe that what the fan wants out of a collegiate trading card product is the ability to go get their players, the guys that they see every Saturday, the guys that their kids are growing up idolizing and watching, and not having to buy, a star-studded pack from across the country and hope that you might land one or two of the guys from your team. It's that ability to go out and know what you're getting, that it's your team that you're supporting. You know that money you're putting into it goes back in large fraction back to the players and back to the school through licensing, because it is an officially licensed product. But it's also that you're getting to tangibly hold on to something and collect something that you were following ardently throughout the season because that's what you care about.
You mentioned the COVID boom, Mike, and I remember that vividly of just how all of a sudden trading cards and really everything, because we were all bored at home, right? All of a sudden collectibles and collecting stuff became like what we kind of had to do as a hobby almost. But just how can you describe how much of a boom that was for the trading card industry, that as bad as that was in so many other areas, but how much that kind of resurrected maybe in some ways the popularity?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think it was all the same feelings that a lot of us had. You're stuck at home, you're looking around your basement and your garage and whatever else, and maybe you found those cards from the late 80s and early 90s, right? The ones you just, when you were younger, you couldn't bring yourself to get rid of, and then all of a sudden they were in a closet for 10, 15 years while you're raising kids and doing all the other things that come with life. And now all of a sudden, this is what you've got to work with. Like, you're looking around your house going, how am I going to have any fun with what I have? And here was a way. And whether that was introducing it to your kids or it was, finding a way to interact with people online now that maybe didn't even exist the last time you collected trading cards. Now it's a new way to bring that to the forefront. I mean, it really took it, to a new stratosphere, not to mention you touched on the different advances in printing and some of the things like that make it more possible. But I just really think that it was an opportunity to bring kind of the old of the collecting and the hobby and the traditional and the nostalgia into the new with online presence and the way that you're able to interact and grow a network of people across a much wider reach than maybe you were before. Before it was hobby shops and trading card shops and card shows, and those things still exist, but now it's just on such a grander scale because of the connectivity that everybody has. And so it was one of those things that, I never say never. It could find another downturn, at any point in the future. But I also think that it has found it's breathed new life into this hobby because of the advances in technology, not only on the printing side, but on the connectivity side of being able to be a community around the trading cards.
And the players have to be fired up about this too, right? I was just looking at, of course, I looked at Florida State's because that's my alma mater, but I also just looked at Baylor stuff right here. And like Baylor, you have actually a ton of different kind of inventory, not just cards, but like the wall stickers, and things like that. Players got to be fired up about this. Yeah,
and my background is on the school side. I spent a lot of years on the school side. I was at Boise State for most of my career, and including as the NIL director for the last few years. So I've seen a lot of the stuff that comes in and goes out, and there's a lot. It's kind of like everything you talk about with the college athletes. There's just a lot to consume. And so when the NIL deals come in, it's a lot, but everybody knows trading cards. Everybody knows what that means. And it's really cool to have your own. And it's even cooler to sign your own. And it's even cooler to get to hold the ones of the holographs and the specialties and all the different stuff that we really try to make part of this, because that's what's important. It's not the cheap stuff. It's not the rip and tear, sheets that you may have gotten for a high school set or the old college ones that you kind of talked about. Like we are making professional trading cards that the student athletes get to experience. And that's really important. But on top of that, our model is to not only provide industry leading royalties, but also guaranteed royalties. And so a lot of the times you're going to see the NIL deals that come in with apparel and other things where it's like, if you sell something, you'll make something, right? And that company may be doing drop shipping and they may just throw up some designs and they may not be too concerned about actually selling the product. And they put that onus on the athletes. We guarantee the royalty as a way of saying, thank you for letting us put you in our set. And now we're going to compensate you for that, for the ability to be in the set. We're going to put the onus on us to sell. We have other avenues that if you want to get compensated for commissions and things like that, we can do that. But this is a guarantee. It's not a sign your name, hope that you receive some residuals later and just see what happens. It is a guarantee that if you're part of this, you're getting compensated, you get your own trading card. It's something you'll have forever.
What has been the response in the marketplace for you guys?
It just keeps growing. That's the really cool thing. This is, year 3. We are going into the 3rd fall now of having done this. And the first one was at 3 schools. Last year for football, we were at 24 schools. And this fall, we're going to be at 60 plus. Ooh. And that's because the demand has been there and people have shown a desire to be a part of that. And so we've really ramped up our retail opportunities. We've got some great partners in various locations. Follett, which is big at Baylor, has been a huge partner for us on a national vendor scale to be able to get into bookstores and some of those fan shops and the places that people really go for their team-specific merchandise and apparel and collectibles, which is what we are. And so that's been really, really good to see. But we also have another subset. This is what we like to say. We like to say that we're locally driven, but we're also nationally relevant. We're locally driven in that we get to the fan base and we get to the heart of what somebody wants to collect in their team. We are also nationally relevant because of the quality that we put into the product, the designs and everything else that makes this collector grade, right? Mm-hmm. PSA, SGC, they're grading our stuff. We have gotten Gem Mint grades from PSA on some of our finest collections. And so it resonates with all levels of card, enthusiasts. It's the people that want just a way in, right? Like, this is cheaper than a t-shirt, right? To buy a pack of trading cards, it's cheaper than a t-shirt if you just want to support your team. But by the same token, if you're a collector and you're chasing that high value kind of pre-rookie card, our cards are of a good enough quality and we're committed to that. But this is something that you can choose to try to make an investment in if that's kind of the game that you play. And we've seen a response, a really positive response from that whole ecosystem of people that buy cards.
So, Mike, before you joined On It, you were doing NIL stuff over at Boise State, very successful over there. We know Jeremiah Dickey and got to know him here in Waco before he ended up out at Boise with the AD job. But what was it like and what is it like to just kind of see this transformation in college athletics now with NIL becoming a thing and players, athletes having this opportunity? Just what was it like kind of navigating the early part of that process? And it's still kind of crazy in some ways, just not as crazy as at the beginning. How crazy was it at the beginning, and where did you sort of find yourself trying to make sense of it all?
Yeah, great question. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of days trying to figure out which way was up. But, at the end of the day, we were able to keep our North Star. And you mentioned Jeremiah. He was so imperative in the way that we were able to put that together, and just his leadership and his willingness to look at something and find the positive in it and find the opportunity in it. And for me personally, it was a long time coming, right? For the athletes to be able to make something of this. And I used to always say when I would get asked, I'd get this question inevitably from somebody like, well, if you're working with, your varsity sport teams, how come you're not working with your club sport teams? And the answer is, you could have always done that. That's why NIL exists. You could have always gone to a club sport athlete and tried to pay him for his NIL or her NIL, and it wasn't going to be an issue. There were no rules they were breaking. These are NCAA rules specific to varsity athletes, and it's about time that those barriers are broken and that there's nothing that differentiates them from their peer students just because they're playing a varsity sport versus a club sport. And so that was really our take on it. It was my take on it, and Jeremiah was on board with the idea that we're going to pursue this at the highest level to the athlete's benefit and figure out a way to make them make the most of this. And so when you kind of had that as a guiding principle and philosophy, you at least knew which way you were going, right? And so there were tops and turns, and there was waves crashing all the time to try to push you in a different direction. But we were really lucky to find On It, the company that I'm at now, and find them pretty early on. We started with them with the trading cards. Boise State was the first school to do that from a football standpoint. And it aligned with what we were looking for. We were looking for opportunities for everybody, and opportunities that not only took care of the entire roster, but also gave additional opportunities to those who performed at a certain level and had the notoriety, right? Through signature cards and additional compensations for stuff like that. So it was really the best of all worlds. But yeah, that whole, the change, right, in 21 and everything that's happened since and just where this is all headed. I think if you can keep in mind that for the most part, when you're trying to identify, what the athletes put into what they do and how good of a thing that is for the school and how much the difference it makes, they obviously deserve something. And at the very least, they deserve to be able to be treated like the rest of their peers on campus from the standpoint of being able to monetize their platform. So from that standpoint, it was a no-brainer for us to go about it the way we did. And not everybody's had the same approach, and things keep changing on the whole industry right now. But I think that with that mindset, we were able to really accomplish some things because we knew, what the end goal was.
Well, Mike, if people want to go, it's on at athlete.com, right? And they can
Yes,
search
sir.
for their school and find the people they like. I especially think it's good. It's just, it's just kind of an easy way. Also, like if you're not a person who's going to give to a gigantic collective, but you want to, say like, yeah, well, I bought the cards, like, at least that it's going to the players and not again, some large ambiguous company.
Absolutely. We think that's one of our hallmarks. We know it's an entry point for a lot of different fans. Fans that maybe aren't in the marketplace, they can buy this. They can find us online, like you mentioned, on athlete.com. We advertise all over the place on Google and social media. And it's also a really great entry point for young fans and birthday presents and things like that, graduation presents. It's been one of the coolest parts of it is to see the young fans really gravitate towards something that this is an entry point for them, because it's not, like you mentioned, it's not the collective, it's not the premium donor prices that it may take to get an experience. This is a way that you can tangibly experience your favorite team at a low price point.
Well, Mike, it's great to talk to you, and thanks for hopping on. Certainly, very, very interesting, and let's do some more stuff. Absolutely, to kind of promote you guys, maybe get some athletes on as well. So
would absolutely love that.
Yeah,
we'll be back at Baylor this fall with football, so we're already ramping up for that.
All right, great. Absolutely, we've got a national fan base here on 365 Sports. So yeah, you throw somebody from UConn, we'll put them on. We love doing interviews, so we'll absolutely do it.
I like that.
All right, Mike. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon. That's Mike Walsh from onathlete.com. Max Olsen's coming up next, and they've got some good looking stuff there on the website.
Yeah, no, it's really nice looking stuff. I wish I would have had this when I was growing up. Honestly, to buy the exclusive Oklahoma football pack of cards, as opposed to, I remember they had like some cards, but they were like pretty generic really in comparison to these, and certainly they were just a grab bag. Like I might get some player from a team that I liked, but I wasn't guaranteed that. But you can buy like, this is only Alabama football players in this pack of cards, right? So I think having that option is great. You can buy them in all sorts of different bundles, but 14 cards per pack, that's great, because there's some now you get like charged
4.
Yeah, it's like 4 or 8, and you get double digits and you feel like lucky nowadays.
Yeah.
So 14's actually like really good.
When I was a kid, it was 20.
Yeah, I mean, everything was better when we were younger. Cards from the premium standpoint, buying them in a shop, yeah, it was way better back when we were younger than what it is now. But we didn't have anything like this, which is cool. And I think, less than $1 a card, or about $1 a card, I think that's probably about the going rate. And you get, like I said, the specificity of getting to hammer home what you like, even the direct sport. So if you want to do like Baylor softball packs, you can do that. You can buy a box of those, and I think that's very cool. They also have what they call the college cling, which is like the big wall stickers, and you can get Ray J. Dennis or Sarah Andrews or like any number of popular players, and I mean, you could never have done that back in the day. So that's pretty cool as well, that you can get like the wall sticker for who's like a Quinn Ewers or something like that, and have that in your kid's room or your man cave or whatever. So yeah, they got some cool stuff on here, and it's still just as crazy to me to see what should have been happening all along, quite frankly. But like to see college sports stars being able to have trading cards and posters and things, it's just like man, finally.
I think in the 80s, they left money on, like, do you know how many Bo Jackson Auburn cards I would have bought? Herschel Walker.
Adrian Peterson. I mean, we're just naming running backs, but
Like, give me a Doug Flutie card? Come on. Like, from Boston College?
Chris Ricks?
Yeah, absolutely. No.
No, he would have made some.
Been the spokes on the bicycle.
They would have been burned on campus after the Florida game, but still, they would have been bought at some point.
He did have that one big throw to PK Sam. He beat Notre Dame in Florida that year. That's the only thing that's kept me from like going to California and kicking him in the shins.
Well, I definitely was one of those that had the box of cardboard that I was like, what's that under the table during COVID? It was in the dining room, like a side table.
You were at my house every day. Yeah. You saw the mess that was.
There was a dining room table, and there was a box tucked underneath it. And I went and looked under it, being at home during COVID, it was a box of cards all the way to the top, like 2 feet high, that I didn't know it was there for the last 10 years. And it was always, I walked by it every single day multiple times and just didn't know because of the drape of the tablecloth. And so, I was that guy during COVID, sorting through my cards, and I know you were, and we didn't have anything like this. These are really sharp design, too. I really like these a lot.
No, absolutely not. When we come back, Max Olsen of The Athletic. This is 365 Sports.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Max Olsen of The Athletic joins us now. This is kind of what we would call like the Max After Dark segment, based on usually he's on earlier in the show, but now it's later, so he can really let it fly and just say, what's on his mind. He doesn't have to worry about the censors. But Max, guys,
I just to be clear, I have not been drinking. I don't know what the implication is, but I have not been drinking today.
Max,
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, almost 5. Almost here. But Max, an interesting week for college football news and litigation and private capital or equity or whatever. What to you jumped out as kind of the most staggering story of the week?
Good question. I think, certainly we're heading towards resolution here on this House settlement. I think obviously there's a ton of details to get figured out here over the next, year. And, certainly like you definitely wonder what the collective bargaining piece is going to look like. And, it's obviously a historic moment for college athletics to for them to finally be backed into a solution here that involves revenue sharing. So there's aspects of that are exciting. I honestly, though, I think I was probably a little more intrigued in some ways by the Drew Weatherford story, the private equity story that Ross Dellinger had on Yahoo this week. I think that that it's been clear here for a little while now that there were going to be people who were going to try to step into the mix here and offer athletic departments large sums of money in order to help them get through this next, to kind of help bridge them through this next era where we're still like coming back from, COVID financially, and then you're heading into a future where you've got this new, $20 million plus line item in your budget. How are we going to handle this? So, will there be, ACC or Big 12 or Group of 5 athletic departments that get involved with this and take this money, and what does that mean for their futures? It certainly feels like that is another story that's coming here in terms of something we got to keep an eye on, that things that you would never imagine many years ago that are now very real.
Yeah, no doubt. That is very interesting, and it kind of depends on who you talk to, at least initially, on whether it's a good idea or not, right? Like the people who love to pump in money are like, no, it's a great idea. There's nothing wrong with it. And those who know a little bit more, maybe have been burned, are like, this is an awful idea. So I tend to think that it probably falls somewhere in the middle, and I'm intrigued to hear more about that for sure. We've also seen a new little, thing in recruiting here lately, Max, where – with Cormani McClain, for example, Mikhail Harrison-Pilot out at Texas Tech. Players who are on scholarship somewhere now not being on scholarship, at least initially, at their new schools. A new way as college coaches try to always find an advantage to kind of play the scholarship limits a little bit. We've also heard, though, about the possibility moving forward of scholarship reductions. Do you have any particular thoughts on scholarships and kind of how all that may be used in the future, and just kind of how teams are finding ways to even get around the limits we have imposed right now?
Yeah, I think I noticed that this is even the case at Baylor. I believe when Steve Linton transferred from Texas Tech to Baylor, I believe in the portal he was listed as a walk-on. And again, I don't know if certainly we have there's more room now. I know Nebraska is one school that's doing this, where you can just have your collective pick up the school bill, and you can go over the 85. So I think we are seeing collectives doing that a little bit, and sometimes that's just a roster management thing, and those guys will be on scholarship at some point or whatever. But that there's certainly there is the ability, if you've got the collective, if you've got the money, you can go over 85. And I know some SEC teams do this. And I know it's probably a little bit weird to the player and their parents and stuff, because it's like, wait, does that mean I'm not worthy of a scholarship here, or what is that saying? But I think there's ways to be creative, and I think that's kind of a net positive, because it also means that those programs are, at the end of the spring, not cutting a bunch of players to get down to 85 and stuff. And so maybe that there's fewer runoffs with that scenario. So that I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But it does, and we haven't really seen somebody just come out and say, like, all right, we're going to have 100 scholarship players this year, and the collective's going to pay for 15 of them. But there's definitely a lot more flexibility now. And you do wonder, like, what is the future model going to look like in terms of scholarship limits? I think that when you talk to coaches, I think they're pretty happy with where things are at right now. The fact that they have the ability to fully manage that 85 and lose everybody or replace everybody that they lose. I think that's viewed as a real positive. Obviously, that's led to way more transfers year after year. But I don't talk to a lot of coaches who are like, man, I'd love to cut this back. So that part will be very interesting.
But I mean, that's part of the thing that's been widely reported, is that everybody else could gain scholarships in this, like baseball.
Matt Rule was very outspoken about the walk-ons.
But the football could lose it, and he even said, like, do we even need 85 anymore? Like, just when you're talking about having a budget for a roster.
Yeah, and I think I think there are some coaches that look at this. Obviously, Matt Rule just came from the NFL, so he probably cares a little bit more about the 53 than the 85 when it comes to when you get in season and it's time to actually prepare for your opponents and stuff like that. I do think that, like, there are some things, like the fact that baseball programs still aren't just fully funded is still kind of crazy to me. And like, if you could get that to a sport where, everybody's on scholarship. Like, I think that's a positive thing for sure. But like, yeah, there's a lot to work out there. And obviously, when you see these, like the settlement talks and stuff, obviously the attention goes to football and the attention goes to the Power 4 or Power 5 leagues. But there's the fallout of this stuff is very far reaching and certainly not just like Division I.
So with Matt Rule's comments about he said they have like 100 and however many, like 145 players or something on the roster right now. So he doesn't want a roster limit that would mean like, okay, if you got 85, that means you got like 85, 86, 90 players maybe on your roster. He wants to have the ability to have these walk-ons. I mean, how detrimental would something like that be to the tradition that is Nebraska football in particular with the walk-on program? I just feel like that's another thing where to his point, you're kind of losing not only opportunities for guys to just grow as men, but also I feel like that's another part of the tradition of college football that you're starting to chip away at a little bit as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, look, I think it's tougher in this era to have a really strong walk-on program, because not just because, guys can easily transfer to situations where they are put on scholarship, but because I think, as college gets more expensive too, you just have like here in Nebraska, there's some good players in Omaha and Lincoln and other areas that, like, why would that kid go walk on when he can go to like one of the South Dakota or North Dakota schools, which are very competitive in FCS and like can give you financial aid and stuff like that, or Northern Iowa or whatever. So I think that is getting a little bit tougher nowadays for programs to have like a walk-on program that is a true strength, like it was with Osborne, of like, man, that they're doing that better than anybody. I think that again, and that's like true walk-ons, guys that just come into your program, not guys that you've recruited and somebody else is paying for it. I think it's just harder to keep that nowadays. It's harder to manage a roster of like 150. That doesn't mean that there should be like hard cutbacks and limits that kind of, make it impossible to have much of a walk-on program. But yeah, I think from a tradition standpoint, you're right. I don't think that's something that people really want to see. Like, walk-ons are generally a pretty harmless thing in college football, and to take away opportunities, you don't want to see that.
Max, what do you make of a college football coach being sued over NIL?
I'm not. I mean, not surprised. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised at all. Certainly we spent a lot of time reporting on Jaden Rashada last year at the Athletic, and so and a lot of the details that are in the lawsuit are details you could read last year. So I think that stuff. I'm glad that stuff did come to light last year, and I'm glad that he was not stuck in, he was able to get out of his letter of intent and not be stuck in a situation where he was not at all getting paid what he was promised. And, frankly, guys, I'm just surprised we don't see this all the time, because you hear from talking to people on the personnel side, talking to coaches, you hear anecdotally all sorts of stories of, oh, this guy went to this school and they promised him, this, and this, and he got there and he got a fraction of that. Like, you hear that all the time, and you've been hearing that throughout the NIL era. So it's in some ways, I mean, yeah, this is a very gaudy thing. That a $13 million contract is insane. And, that it made it a very big lightning rod thing, because this kid was, a high profile quarterback recruit who was really shopped around in the NIL marketplace and stuff. But I'm surprised we don't see a lot more of this stuff. You like, players should, and their families should speak up when they get hosed on these deals, or they go to places and get lied to. Like, I think that they should use their voice and put that out there. And so, it's obviously, for Billy Napier, it makes a tough situation there even tougher. And, certainly if he made a promise of, we'll give you $1 million if you sign your letter of intent, like, that's the kind of stuff that the NCAA will investigate too. So, and they've already begun that. So, it's the hot seat was the seat was already extremely hot in Gainesville, and this definitely doesn't help.
So Paul started off by asking you like which story that's out there is kind of like, I guess, the most interesting. But I have to say, I feel like in looking over your timeline a little bit earlier and just seeing some of your responses as well, the thing you're most excited about is NCAA, the video game, right? I mean, that is the...
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah, like, so what's it been like to see all of the teases, the trailer drop, hearing about some of the details? Like, what are you most excited for, and just how pumped up are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I mean, right now, my current feeling is extreme jealousy because my colleague Chris Vanini and Andy Staples and Bud Elliott and Matt Brown, a bunch of guys were in Orlando this week and got to play the game today and learn a ton about what's in the game. And I was not one of those people. So right now, a lot of FOMO. We're working through that. But no, I'm stoked. Yeah, I that's just a video game I loved since I was a kid, and it probably in some deep down way probably factored into what I've ended up doing for a living, just because I loved playing that game so much and loved the sport. And so yeah, couldn't be more excited for that to come out. And you know, I think that like it's just you saw the trailer last week. Some of the stuff is just kind of jaw-dropping because it's just been so long. And like you forget, you know, McLean Stadium's never existed in a video game, right, guys? Like there's, you know, and the current uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Like just bringing this stuff up to date, that alone is super exciting. And I think the gameplay will be great and Dynasty and all that. So yeah, you know, when we hit July 19th, I'm probably going to cancel a bunch of these radio interviews and just disappear for a few weeks. So I think that's probably how it's going to go.
Well, I mean, it's right after media days are over, right, Max? So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
You'll have a little runway to do that. But yeah, I'm upset that you were not included in that group. I think those are your peers, and you have that same amount of juice. So
I think Chris told me he got to play the game for like 2 hours today. I will lap him in terms of time spent on that game very quickly once it hits. So yeah, we're gonna invest some real solid time into that, and yeah, I'm sure your listeners are excited too. I think that the folks at EA do a great job, and you know, very very optimistic. And honestly, if the game's terrible, I'm still gonna defend it with my life and say it's the best because we've just waited this long. And I'm just looking for all the good in it.
Yeah, the big surprise, you have to play it with an old Atari-style joystick. Like, that's that's what it's going to be. Max, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Max Olsen of The Athletic with us here on 365 Sports. Yeah, there's not much that it's not going to excite me about that game. Like, you know,
yeah, I mean,
just because it's been so long.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm not even one of the hardcore players of it, like I think Max is, or like people I grew up with, and some of the people I've seen on social media that are already plotting their Twitch broadcasts or their YouTube broadcasts of them playing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that, especially early on. And folks who enjoy that will have plenty of content to devour, just people playing online and playing each other. And I don't know all of the online specifics. I think there's some catches there maybe. I haven't.
There's been a couple of things reported, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
You've got this group of guys who's about to come and tell us all about it. So
yeah. So or what they can say. So yeah, I'll look forward to Matt Brown. Releasing some more details on his experience playing it, and yeah, I'll buy it. I just got a PS5 not that long ago, so I'll pick it up and definitely have it available, and we'll get some good run out of it. But I've just never been like a really like good player because I play all the time or anything. I'm much more of a casual, but I still want to have it as an option. And who knows, maybe I pick it up and I don't put it down for a long time. Maybe I get addicted to it because it's just so good. Yeah. Hopefully that's the case. That they really hit it out of the park. Like Max said, I think most people are just glad to have it, period, and just an updated version. Even if it was pretty much what it was before, but there's so much stuff that's happened since then that to have that update, but then maybe have some cool new bells and whistles to it will be great. So, yeah, I look forward to hearing about all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers, here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel & Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel & Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel & Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. Normally do this Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45, but we have Max Olsen, and good to talk to him as always. So we starting a little bit later than normal, but that's all good because we got a few different things to talk about. And for those who maybe are just popping in for the first time, it's typically where we get down and talk about some stories that we otherwise would not be getting to because we talk 99% college football. It's 98. I'd say 2% is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's college football, a little bit of Cowboys. So kind of spread our wings a little bit here with this segment. And I want to start off with, did you see the video that was released of Scottie Scheffler's arrest?
Oh, yeah, I did. It looks like Barney Fife got in trouble there. I think I have a theory on this. He split his pants running after not even running after the car. He just kind of the
car kind of just pulled up to
jaunted.
Yeah,
it didn't look like the way it was described. Like when I read about it first, was that he did this really crazy illegal move,
right? It looked like a dude that just was confused and was just trying to get where he was supposed to be going. He wasn't speeding through a driveway or a gate or anything like that. And I need to watch it again because I saw it right before we came on earlier. And it's not 4K footage. It's from kind of far away. And you see this guard just get pretty pissed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it looked like he had a pad or something, probably the list of people, and he kind of hit the window or something. And I'm not trying to make up stuff, but it just looked like he got really angry really quickly and knocked the window or something out of frustration. And then he just looked like he got angrier and angrier, and it didn't appear to be a situation where Scottie Scheffler was doing anything really.
No, and Yeah, this officer got out over his skis and got angry, and then they created this story of like he destroyed his pants.
Right,
and
yeah.
he was on the car. Like I'm like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like none of that stuff made any sense from the story that they gave, and it's embarrassing for Louisville and their police department, and their mayor's trying to make this go away as fast as he can.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of developments with that today as, there was that video that was released by Louisville PD, and it shows the footage of the arrest of Scottie Scheffler as he was trying to get into Valhalla Golf Club to compete early in the morning, and the footage is kind of far away. You can tell enough though that you can see what's going on, but it's like early enough in the day where it's still like dark outside, and you can see some of the not tussle. There wasn't a tussle, but you can see like the kind of the body language of the police officer. And from my vantage point, it looked like he was the one who clearly was getting pretty angry pretty quickly. But it was two different video cameras that were recording, and one was a street pole camera that was just outside the course. The other was the dash cam of the actual police car. So I haven't seen that one, actually. Yeah, the one I saw was the one that was like across the street.
And the mayor was like, why is there no body cam footage?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, but so there was that. So I actually need to go and watch the actual dash cam footage. But Scheffler's trying to get in. The officer comes up to him pretty quick, runs over to the driver's side, and then they have a bit of a talk back and forth. And Scottie's still in his vehicle, and then eventually more officers show up, and eventually he is taken out of the car and handcuffed, and then walked over to a patrol car. So it feels like the city of Louisville's kind of scrambling at this point as far as their police department. The Metro Police Department of Louisville says they have taken corrective action against the police officer who arrested Scottie Scheffler because he didn't activate his body cam video recorder, as you just mentioned, during the incident outside of Valhalla Golf Club. During a news conference, their chief, Jacqueline Gwen Villaroel, said that the detective, Brian Gillis, violated standard department operating procedure for body-worn cameras, which states officers are required to maintain their BWs, their body-worn cameras, in a constant state of operational readiness, and he did not have his ready as required. So that is why he is getting suspended, is because he did not have his body camera on. And that's always shady when the body camera's not working, man. I've seen enough cop shows now that, like, typically that's not by accident. Yeah. Like, that is 99% of the time. I'm sure it just has glitches or something. I'll give the benefit out there, but it's like, oh, all of a sudden you walked up to that car, it went black, and 30 seconds later, there's a big bag of marijuana sitting there. Like, that's crazy how that happened.
It always seems to happen in the cases where the cop's story is fuzzy.
Yes, exactly.
Their story is fuzzy. Like, well, why don't we just watch the body cam footage of you arresting Scottie Scheffler where he apparently roughed you up.
Right.
And then it's like, this damn thing.
Yeah.
It's always
short.
I told you to get the 385 and not the 380. It says, that's always how it seems to happen.
Yeah, so you can check out the footage. There's a couple of different versions, but as far as like the interaction that apparently set this cop off, the Louisville Police Department says that they don't have any footage of that. So it looks like this is going to be pretty open and shut in my mind. I don't think that if you were thinking that, oh no, the reporting's one-sided, Scottie Scheffler's a punk and he asked for it or anything like that, like every single indication now is this was a cop over on a power trip, basically, well over his skis. And so I think we're potentially going to hear more about discipline, but the arraignment for this is scheduled for June the 3rd, so about 10 days from now, and that will take place in the morning. So on June the 3rd, mid-morning, mid-afternoon, I'm sure we'll be hearing a follow-up on the Scottie Scheffler story. But, yeah, there is footage out there now, and a lot of the people now involved on the Louisville side are like, we just want to move on. We just want to get past this. And it's like, yeah, I bet you do, because it looks really bad on your part. So we'll see what happens. But the cop involved has at least been disciplined for not having his body camera on. So there you go with that. All right, little bit of baseball, and I got kind of a mix of a lot of different things here, but more bad news for the Texas Rangers as they continue to struggle mightily. But John Gray now put on the injured list with a right groin strain after leaving Tuesday's start against the Phillies with an injury that's now obviously a right groin strain. He was 2-2 with an ERA just over 2, but he should have had more wins, quite frankly. It's not gotten the support, which is basically the entire staff should have more wins than they probably do at this point. But that is just another guy that's on the DL now, and so it's injured. And so now they've called up right-handed pitcher Jesus Tinoco from AAA Round Rock. And Cody Bradford, the former Baylor star, has been transferred to the 60-day injured list as a related move as they just sort out the roster there. But, man, they are digging into the minors, buddy.
Right now, of their what they want their rotation to be, DeGrom's on the DL, and that's been known for a while.
Yeah, it's been
Max Scherzer was getting better and then got hurt again when he was doing rehab.
Right.
John Gray is out.
Yep.
Evaldi is out right now. Tyler Mahle is not back yet, and that's somebody they brought in. So their rotation is all gone. Now Michael Lorenzen is still healthy, and they brought him in, but after him and Cody Bradford, but he's injured now. So really, it's Lorenzen and Dane Dunning, and then a bunch of minor league guys. It doesn't help that Evan Carter is not off to a good offensive start. Josh Young is out. Wyatt Langford is out. Corey Seager has not hit his stride yet, although I do feel that that's going to come eventually and hopefully at the right time. They're really only getting consistent offense production out of about 3 guys.
Yep.
And this team, and you look at the rest of the roster, and it's just a bunch of guys that were backups last year. And so.
Well, then you even brought in, Leiter, and then he gets just destroyed. So it's like he's clearly not ready, and he may not ever be ready with Texas. Like, we'll have to see. But, I mean, he did not perform to the level that you were hoping. And it maybe too soon anyways, but you, had to go to him, and it didn't work out. So, even
not to
that hope.
Kumar Rocker is,
So their pitching staff is basically destroyed at this point, but they did activate Dane Dunning off the 15-day IL yesterday, so there's a little bit of something. But yeah, another pitcher headed to the injury side of things, and so we will see Jesus Tinoco from AAA Round Rock as the Rangers continue to try to sort through things. Are you thinking it's just injuries at this point?
Yeah,
I mean,
do.
It's a lot of it, if not all of it. Yeah,
there's not, other than Evan Carter, I think actually is because his back's been bothering him and he's playing through it. Corey Seager is just, it's just a rough start.
He'll be okay.
He'll be. Look, he's one of the best hitters in the league. He'll be fine.
Sure.
Simeon's playing well. Adolis Garcia's playing really well. Jonah Heim's still playing well. Chaveras is playing well. Duran's been good when they put him in. So, they're all right. I mean, again, the division's not all that great. No. So they just need to keep pace and then hit the gas when everybody's healthy.
Yeah. So just making note as a Rangers fan. And the thing is about it is, it really is amazing how much a World Series can change just your whole outlook on things, because I am if they miss the playoffs, that's a terrible follow-up. That's a terrible season. You should absolutely be making the playoffs, and that's so far from now anyways. They're just 3 games back, and they're 3 games under 500. So like you said, the division's not unconquerable this early by any means. But I also can just deal with this so much better post-World Series as a fan than if they still hadn't won one, because it's now it just makes so much of a difference that you won one now, and you don't feel like this constant need to have to finally win that first one. It's just amazing, the monkey off your back that creates. And so I still expect him to be better, but that's just a note. And that ties into some other baseball news that I had as far as a little bit of a grab bag here. But Miami's Lone Depot Park is going to welcome back the World Baseball Classic when the tournament comes back in 2026. Miami Marlins home park was where you saw the WBC title game and Shohei Ohtani striking out Mike Trout to win Japan the WBC, which was an awesome event. The crowds that they had was that was what the World Baseball Classic is supposed to be. I felt like what we saw all across the various sites, but particularly Miami there with the U.S. and
it's way better than anything the Marlins put on in Miami.
Oh my God! So, it's the fans there were like, "This is what we want to pay season tickets for."
Especially when Jimmy Buffett had a song called "Everybody's Got a Cousin in Miami," and for the countries that are most represented in outside of Japan, and I'm sure they've got a large Japanese community too, but for the Latin countries and the Caribbean countries that are in that, like, there are fans all, like, that is the population of Miami.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is what it is. So it makes it really cool that they're all there, like watching Dominican Republic versus Puerto Rico or something like that.
Dude,
Holy cow.
some of those were crazy scenes.
Yeah.
It was awesome to see. So the World Baseball Classic will be back in 2026, and Miami wasn't the only site announced. They've now announced all the sites, but Miami is significant because they're going to host every single round. They're going to have games all 3 rounds. So they'll host in the Pool D, they'll host the quarterfinals, and then they will host the championship round. So that's why I mentioned them first, because that's where the championship will be decided. But they'll have games there the entire time. But the other sites also announced. San Juan, Puerto Rico is where you will find Pool A. And on that side of the bracket, Pool B will be Minute Maid Park in Houston.
All right.
The WBC coming to Houston, and Houston will also host the quarterfinal round. So teams obviously remain to be seen, but if you want to see some WBC action, Houston, around here at least, Houston will host the first 2 rounds. And then obviously, like I said, Miami. But the 4th site, so you have San Juan and Houston on the left side of the bracket, and then Miami and Tokyo, Japan, the Tokyo Dome. That historic venue will be where Pool C plays. So, I loved the last iteration of the World Baseball Classic. I remember when it first started, and I just thought, like, that's a cool concept, but I don't know that it really took off or really made much of a dent. It was just a cool idea, but that last go-around, I was like, that's exactly what you want it to be. And then, it would have been cool to see, like, Trout walk, not walk it off, but, like, just as an American, make it a bit more competitive than getting blown by Shohei Ohtani. But there was also something pretty special about seeing that, because it's like, damn, these are like the 2 best in the entire world.
The minute that this is over, they're on the same plane,
and then they're on the same team. Yeah,
back to play for the Angels. At least then, now not so much.
Not so much now. They were then, not now, but still within the same area.
Yeah. The painful life of being an Angels fan.
And then Shohei won $5, so they bet on that. No, I'm just kidding. Of course he didn't do that. So anyways, they've announced
his translator might have.
Yeah, his translator did, with a few more zeros on it. So there are the sites: San Juan, Houston, Tokyo, Miami. Houston and Miami for the semis, Miami for the championship round. That's the World Baseball Classic in 2026. So that is definitely something off the radar, but something of interest to me at least. And also, one final baseball note as far as this go-around. Some interesting stuff coming out of that sport today at least, but we've all long heard about robot umpires, right? And their place in the future of really all sports, although I think, football is a bit tricky. I don't know how you could possibly do that without having some boots on the ground. But with baseball, you need some potential help when it comes to balls and strikes. Whenever you're watching a game and you see Angel Hernandez behind the plate, it's almost inevitable that somebody's going to be like, man, robots could do better than this. And there's been enough, off officiating at times that you do wonder, especially when you see the tracker on baseball broadcasts of, well, would it be easier if they just did balls and strikes this way? Because it's way more accurate.
Yeah.
And there's part of the traditionalists. It's like, no, you don't want to take away the umpires from the game. Well, for the traditionalists, a bit of a win for at least right now, as it has been announced by Commissioner Rob Manfred that they will not adopt robot umpires. Feels like I'm like in a TV show or something.
Yeah.
They will not adopt robot umpires to call balls and strikes by 2025. So that is not coming down the pipeline for home plate umpires, but that was one of the topics that was talked about as Rob Manfred held a news conference after the owners' meetings. He said the automated ball strike system hasn't developed as they would prefer since they started using it in the minors back in 2019. There's still some technical issues, and they haven't made as much progress in the minors this past year as they were hoping to have made at this point. So it's becoming more likely that it's not a go for 25, but there's growing sentiment that the automated balls and strike calls should first be implemented through a challenge system per the players. Like the players are advocating, or there's a growing sentiment that they would prefer that, where I guess you could throw in a challenge on a ball or strike call, and then the, automated umpire could you could go to the footage and determine it that way. So you still have umpires making the original call, and you can still, your catchers can still be rewarded for how they frame pitches. So
there is an Instagram account called the Umpire Auditor.
Yes,
and he is, or they are, I don't know who it is. It's a guy with a crap load of time on his hands. But he's very thorough on the worst calls of the week or bad calls. And those things, that's part of the reason that Major League Baseball just needs to kind of get on top of it, because there's just one umpire auditor right now. Eventually, like when they continue to have problems, it'll get bigger and bigger, and the players will get madder and madder. And then especially if you feel like you've got a situation where you can solve it and you're confident in solving it. And you're not getting rid of the umpires altogether. It's not going to be.
Still have your guy at second base.
It's not going to be R2D2 out there beeping around. It's going to be, the home plate umpire will have the cam on him, and they have the other part of it that's the system, and then he can call balls and strikes, and then if they go and then they find out. So
there would be a challenge issued by a batter signaling to the home plate umpire that he wants a call reviewed. And there's actually an example out there. Dane Perry of CBS Sports has an example up on his Twitter page, I believe. But one of the technical issues the MLB and the Players Association are trying to work out, per this report, is apparently neither wants the zone to be called as the rule book states, which is the armpits to knees basically in a square. They're both not on board with it being like the traditional cube structure. So that's one of the things they're working through. Right now they use that system based on where the ball crosses at the midpoint of home plate, 8.5 inches from the front and back. So Manfred said, originally we thought everybody was going to be wholeheartedly in favor of getting it right every single time. But one thing we've learned in these meetings is the players feel there could be other effects on the game that would be negative if you use it the entire time.
Yeah.
So they're still working through that. Odds are we'll see it by the 2030s, I would think. We're going to have something along those lines. But for those people fearing like baseball is going to be taken over by the robots, not so fast and not in the next couple of years at the very least. All right, so Scottie Scheffler looks like he's going to be an innocent man when all is said and done, if you didn't believe that already. Baseball's got a lot going on, including the WBC sites and robot umpires. What have I not hit? The WNBA. I've seen less and less Caitlin Clark talk. I'm still seeing a lot of it. I still feel like there's that flame, kindling for the WNBA to take full advantage of, although it's not quite what it.
I think she's been up and down a little bit because of look, she's a professional now.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, she's also been playing
better players.
Yeah. She's playing against better players. Also, she had like a month off.
Right. That's right. She did play in the NCAA tournament and then just basically turn around, get drafted, and start playing the WNBA season.
Yeah, it's not. She hasn't had a full offseason.
But she's playing better players. She's playing grown women, and so she's had her ups and her downs. But this is not so much about her, just the general WNBA interest level. They have now announced their first international franchise. Toronto will welcome a WNBA team and start play in 2026. So the first international team led by a sports venture group led by Larry Tenenbaum, Kilmer Sports Ventures, reportedly cost $115 million to purchase the Toronto team. He's also Tenenbaum, chairman and minority owner of the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which has both the Maple Leafs and the Raptors. So that's typically what you see to with the WNBA franchise. It's usually like the NBA owner or somebody already in town usually starts a franchise as well. So Toronto is getting a WNBA team.
And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, was at the press conference today. And Canadian hip-hop superstar and not at all running for his life, Drake.
Was he really?
He was there, yeah.
I thought you were saying Canadian superstar Bret the Hitman Hart, but no Drake. Okay, that's cool.
So Drake was there. I think there are other Canadian celebrities there, but Drake, if it's sports and it's Canada, Drake's going to pretend like he cares.
I thought he was a Las Vegas Aces fan. Isn't that how this works? Where I guess he now has to kind of show his support, though, for Toronto. So, I didn't realize that he was there at that press conference for that. So that is very interesting, and I'm sure we'll see him around there. But that's, at least a sign that there is more growth. And then meanwhile, just a couple more notes going off the radar here. A couple of media notes, actually, that I want to get to first. But welcome back to college football, Jake Trotter. Did you see that news?
Yeah, I did. I'm excited about that. I'll have to get him on the show next week if I can.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's about to be barraged with multiple college football shows wanting him to come in and start breaking down college football. But Jake Trotter covered college football for a very long time for ESPN. I remember he covered the Oklahoma beat.
He was Big 12.
Yeah, Big 12. He was all over that. But He was based in Oklahoma. I recall when I first started to come across his work. But here recently, he's been doing stuff with the NFL, and he has now been promoted to senior writer and is rejoining ESPN's college football coverage. He's been with the company since 2011 and will continue to appear on SportsCenter, College Football Live, and then their various radio shows as well. But I just thought that was of interest that Jake Trotter is going to be back in the college football reporting game. So welcome back to him. And like you said, I'm sure at some point in time we will end up talking to him about NIL and realignment and, the actual games themselves. But that's good for the coverage of college football. Meanwhile, not such good news for fans of this other media personality, Ed Werder, who is like Mr. Dallas Cowboys to me as far as reporting goes. But he said in a statement that for 26 years he's had the privilege of reporting on the NFL and the Cowboys while holding an ESPN microphone, but the time has come to an end, and he is now considering other opportunities as his ESPN career has wound down. But he feels like there is more in store for him in terms of covering the league. And so he had a goodbye statement that you can go read over on his Twitter page where he goes a little bit more in depth. But your typical just showing gratitude and thankful to have had the opportunity, but that I'm not going anywhere. But yeah, Ed Werder out at ESPN after 26 years covering the Dallas Cowboys more often than anything else. But just kind of bittersweet to see that. We've seen a lot of, you get older, you see a lot of people kind of come and go. Not that he's going necessarily, but still caught me off guard. So good luck to Ed Werder and whatever he has planned next.
Yeah, I know Ed. I've spent some time with him. Great guy. Fantastic reporter. Like, he was gone from ESPN for about 18 months at one point. When he got caught up in layoffs. And Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones kind of told ESPN hey, you need to get this guy. You need to get this guy back on because he is such a trusted reporter. And he is not. And I don't say that there are some guys that are trusted reporters like Adam Schefter, and you know what they're doing.
Right.
But Ed Werder is one of the best at what he does. I'm sure somebody's going to snap him up really quickly. And so best of luck to Ed. He's going to get hired really, really fast. Great guy. Just kind of the paragon of excellence in our business. And so he'll be all right.
All right, wrapping it up here. Charles Barkley has sounded off on TNT.
I saw this, yeah.
And he is basically said, he's pissed. He's pissed about the whole situation with Turner Sports, but TNT particular, losing the NBA. He was on the Dan Patrick Show, and he said flat out that morale sucks around there. He said, plain and simple, I just feel so bad for the people I work with, Dan. These people have families, and I just feel really bad for them right now. So very caring about the people behind the scenes. And Dan actually asked him, what have you thought? Have you guys talked about, basically pooling together and, shopping the show around and trying to, to sell it to, Apple or somebody like that? Get all of the camera folks, get the producers, get the four of them. Although last night they had Draymond Green also on the set. I know it's not the first time, but it's it got too crowded. It was it was just too much. It's you don't need four former players all at one time. Kenny, Chuck, and Shaq, that's enough. We don't need also Draymond now in the mix.
If someone's not Shaq wasn't there the other night,
didn't have him. Fine.
Vince Carter was on in his place, and Vince did well. That's.
But they were even crowded on the table because they're giant men to begin with. But then you have another body, and so it was just they didn't need four former players talking about the same thing in the post game or at halftime or whatever. But Barkley said morale sucks. Patrick floated that idea. Barkley said that's something that they've talked about and are considering. But it does not sound like it's good right now over at TNT because of the news that they are losing the NBA rights. It's as bad as you thought that it might be. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But Charles Barkley not hiding his feelings on anything.
I think if he did that, especially given the kind of money that he and Shaq have and the production company, if they just did that and sold it, that would be.
I think they're exploring.
They would make it. It would be. Again, the only thing it wouldn't have the ability to is that halftime stuff, or maybe they would. Maybe they would where they get.
But would you have the games? That's the problem.
You wouldn't have the games necessarily, and all that, and would you do it? How many nights a week would you do it? Like you do it like you do now, and. But I think they would still have that. One of my favorite things that they do is there's not an interview that the players like to do more in a post game than that one. That's the one they like to do. And so, when you hear, Anthony Edwards saying, bring your ass, and all that stuff, Jalen Brunson was making fun of Kenny. They kind of threw Kenny under the bus when he was like, a couple series ago. He's like, Kenny, he changed his pocket square from orange to different and then changed it back. And then Brunson's making fun of him or, everybody has fun with them.
Right.
So that's the thing. That's one of the things I would love to see them keep because the guys, when they win the game and get to go do the interview, just have a blast talking to them. So,
yeah, well, it ties into college football because he said when they saw that they got college football on TNT that he knew that's not good news because that's money that otherwise would have been spent on the NBA. So the moment he saw that just made it sink in even further that, they're losing the NBA. So potentially they shop that show on its own. But he panned his bosses at Turner and, for just not having their ducks in a row and just not handling it, I guess, the best of ways. But he didn't hold back, and it was interesting to hear that as you see the writing on the wall for that show. Meanwhile, closing it out tonight, Eastern Conference Finals after last night, the Mavericks, yeah, baby, go take game number 1 against the Timberwolves in Minnesota. Tonight, Eastern Conference Finals, game 2, Pacers at the Celtics. Boston leads that 1-0. And then also later on tonight, you've got the Stanley Cup playoffs continuing on, the Western Conference Finals, the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers in Big D. Game 1 starting at 7:30 on TNT. So you've got 2 playoff games, one in both the NBA and NHL on tap tonight. Garrett, how do you feel about the Dallas Stars?
Man, I feel good about this one. They've kind of been on a collision course with Edmonton. It was either going to be they were going to have to go through Edmonton or they were going to have to go through the Golden Knights to get to here. And they've already taken care of Vegas. This is going to be fun, man. I'm interested to see because I don't think Edmonton has the star power to match Dallas line for line. And they're going to have to switch up. They can't put Connor McDavid, who's the best player in the world right now. He's also been banged up. It's an upper body issue. Nothing's really come out with it. He's skating fine, but he's been hesitant on shots. They're going to have to try to split him and Leon Draisaitl up on lines to try to counteract what Dallas does. I don't think they can do that. When you look at the matchup as far as your goalies go, Jake Oettinger is, to me, him and Sergei Brakov from the Florida Panthers are the best goalies left in this. And if you look right now, the goalie that Edmonton has, he got pulled the last series. He's been struggling. And when Dallas faced him last, man, Dallas burked him. It was 5-0. I think this one, if Connor McDavid was healthy, I think Edmonton could make it go 6, possibly 7. But the way he's banged up, the way Dallas is humming right now, and one important note for Dallas, they won't have Roope Hintz available tonight. He is coming back. He's game to game. He should be back on for game 2. He got banged up against the Avalanche. You get him back in the lineup, Dallas is going to be hell to beat. So
they are kicking that off tonight. Dallas goal and a half favorites in this one, game number 1, Western Conference Finals. So, yeah, got Pacers, Celtics, Oilers, Stars on tap tonight, and there's a bunch of things that are off the radar.
Thanks a lot, Craig. When we come, this is something we've never been able to do before. When we come back, it's the top 5. My apologies for what you're about to see. Emery was very mad at me today. That's all I'll say. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Hello! That big wave means it's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by Texas Beef House. Today, an offshoot of a discussion Craig and I had on the show yesterday about the running backs in the Big 12. Well, I've made the top 5 rushing attacks in the conference all together. And what that means that Livy Dunn will not be in today's top 5.
Oh, come on!
Sorry, Emery. Just how it is. Just how it is. Maybe I'll get her in sometime next week somehow. But the top 5 rushing attacks in the Big 12. This is running backs and potentially quarterbacks. First of all, someone who was off the list yesterday, and I get it from Pro Football Focus, Arizona State was not very good. But you're talking about Cameron Scatterbo and Alton McCaskill in that backfield. Scatterbo had a great year last year. Alton McCaskill had a great year a couple years ago. Now he's transferred in from Houston via Colorado. Should do really well in the new Big 12. Look, I don't know about Sam Levitt, their quarterback, and what he can run like, but he probably won't have to with Scatterbo and McCaskill back there if things go well for Kenny Dillingham in year 2. And while I think it'll be tough for them, I think you're going to see a lot of plays out of the running game from the Sun Devils. Number 4, Kansas. And I know this is not maybe the best representation of Kansas, but I just love this gif of Lance Leipold, so I put it up there. He's almost like he's telling me, duh, we have a good running attack. Jalen Daniels is healthy. He can run. Devin Neal's one of the best running backs in the entire country. And don't sleep on Daniel Highshaw, who has come in at times and made big, big plays for the Jayhawks over his career. So Neal, Highshaw, Daniels, and if Jalen Daniels is healthy, Kansas is a legit college football playoff contender. And why are they a college football playoff contender? Because if Jalen Daniels is healthy for all 12 games this year, they're playing in the college football playoff more than likely, or in the Big 12 championship game, which probably means that they've got a great shot at the college football playoff. I think the Jayhawks should not be slept on at all this year if Jalen Daniels is healthy. If he's not, then those running backs I just talked about are going to have a lot to do, but their running game in the wide zone with Jeff Grimes should be really good. And I think Daniel Highshaw will flourish under Jeff Grimes. We've seen players like him at Baylor and BYU have really, really good seasons. Number 3, West Virginia. Pay no attention to that cut. C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White are the running backs. Garrett Green is the quarterback, and we know that Garrett Green can move around in the running game great. And he's gotten better as a passer year 1 to year 2. You would seem to think that would happen year 2 to year 3. But this is a thunder and lightning backfield that they can have. They can gain yards on the ground. They can win in bad weather. I think West Virginia will continue to build on the year they had last year. I know there's West Virginia fans out there that are still a little about Neil Brown. I think he proved to you last year that he's a guy who deserves a chance to stay and prove that he can do it again. Last year was not a fluke. That was a really good coaching job. They've got a better team this year, player for player. They got more veterans. Their offensive line is intact. They've gotten better on both sides of the ball, and the running game should be able to push them to a lot of wins this year. Number 2, Kansas State. Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards. That you may not have to throw the ball ever there. Now they will, and they'll probably throw it a lot to Dylan Edwards, who's really great out of the backfield catching the pass. We saw that at Colorado last year. Big-time playmakers all over the place, and Avery Johnson for a full season will be a blast to watch, and EMAW country is going to be going wild for him. So you throw his running game in there with Giddens, who we already know is good, and Edwards, who we know has big play capability behind what will be a rebuilt offensive line, but let's face it, it's Kansas State. They grow offensive linemen there. They should be fine, and they should dominate the Big 12 in running this year. And number 1, UCF. There's probably going to be the debate, why UCF over Kansas State? It was a razor-thin margin. How do we feel about this GIF?
Looks good. The Knight's having a good time.
Yeah, everybody's having a good time. That's the bookstore. We walked through there. Here's a funny story, a segue. When I was walking through the bookstore, I think this is the bookstore, but when I was walking through the bookstore, I met 2 different people who watched our podcast.
That's awesome.
It was great. So I loved being at UCF. They were awesome to us. But UCF, and not just because they were nice to me, but KJ Jefferson, RJ Harvey, Penny Boone. First down machines. Penny Boone's a big bruiser. RJ Harvey's no little tiny dude himself. They're going to be able to get first downs on 3rd and 5 running the ball. They've got KJ Jefferson, one of the best running quarterbacks in the country, who is big and strong and fast. Laser rocket arm, big, strong, and fast, very much in the Cam Newton mold. They will get first downs. That's what the running game's about. First downs. And UCF will have the guys to get first downs in key spots that are hard to bring down, that are big and strong and fast, and they can do it in a lot of different ways. And Gus Malzahn will have a blast. Remember the last time that Gus Malzahn had 2 running backs that were studs? Was that Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams?
That might have been.
Gus Malzahn? If they weren't, I'm sorry, but, he's done well over his career having 2 stud running backs and mobile quarterbacks. He's done fine. So, UCF will have a lethal rushing attack this year, and would not be surprised to see 2 1,000-yard rushers in that backfield and the quarterback getting pretty close to it. I think they'll have a big offense this year, and most of it will be running the ball. That's going to do it for the top 5. Craig and I are... Oh, wow. That was abrupt.
My bad.
That was abrupt. So we're back here. I almost traveled through time and space to get back here that quickly. So that's how that happened. But, Craig, we had a fun show today. Loved the guests that we had. Really thought they were all great. Doug Rohan and Mike, and then of course Max. So great off the radar today. Really good topics. Just I feel good energy. Other than the fact that, and this is weird. If there's an entomologist in the chat, maybe they can help us out with this. This side of the desk, no gnats. That side of the desk, gnats.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe there's something under the set.
Under the set, yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of because it's like I took a shower like 2 weeks ago, so that shouldn't be an issue. No, I mean, it's not that either because I would check myself if that was the case. But, I don't know, but it's become problematic. So if you just see me talking, there's like a gnat lands on my nose and you see me freak out about it. That's why. But, yeah, we got to get to the bottom of this because it's driving me insane.
Look, I don't want to have happen where a bug flew into my mouth again.
It's already happened
It already happened on the air one time, and that was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Unfortunately for you, that's not the best viral version of that happening is the local anchor I forget how long ago this was that had his whole language like flipped. He went from very professional broadcaster to like, what the hell is going on here? Like, as soon as the bug flew into his mouth, that's one of the better videos that's been out there for years.
Yes.
But yeah, yours wasn't quite to that level.
No, mine, it's just like I was in the middle of talking and a bug like flew into the back of my throat and I was like, oh.
Well, I don't even know if I'd feel a gnat because they're so small, but I definitely feel it when they're landing on my face while I'm trying to talk. So yeah, we got problems we got to address here.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything's great. And
Yeah.
one more show until the week is over with, so almost there.
And then we got a 3-day weekend, which I know that we just took one, but we took a 4-day weekend last week. But we have Memorial Day coming up, so that's coming up. And don't forget about 365 Sports Tonight.
This
Like
isn't
and
the Howard
subscribe.
Stern show where we're going to be on suddenly like 3 days a week here pretty soon. It's just a matter of just very weird timing that this has all happened the way that it has.
I'm going to start holding my mic like this.
Yeah, I'm going to start broadcasting from home if we were going to do it like the Howard Stern show, but and then do it 3 days a week. But yeah, no, we're not. It's not going to be a habit. But in these summer months, we got surgeries and holidays, and so it's just worked out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. When tomorrow we've got Grayson Greenhafer. We got a couple topics we didn't get to today that I think that everybody will really like, and breaking down some stuff as we head through the summer. Everybody have a great night, and again, please like and subscribe. We're up over 43,000 now, so remember when we get to 50, keg stand right over there. So I've got to start training.
Yeah, you
got to
do.
start training. Get back into my old groove. This is 365 Sports. Have a great night, everybody.